Chapter 798. Regardless of whether it was Lu Yi or Ing Wu Ji, they both had high attainments in the Tao of Concealment and Array Tao. Although the cultivators from the Hidden Realm were not bad, they were far inferior to the two of them. Even after the two of them had snuck into the array and boarded the spirit boat, the other cultivators did not notice them and continued to busy themselves. Considering that Ing Wu Ji could not sense his presence, Lu Yi could only release a trace of his own aura and let him follow him. The spirit boat had 3 levels. The top level was where the 2 envoys resided. The man and woman from before had walked out from the side room at the top. The middle and bottom levels were where the cultivators of the Hidden Realm lived. These 3 levels were not suitable for long-term concealment. So after boarding the spirit boat, Lu Yi led Ing Wu Ji straight to the bottom of the boat. He originally wanted to find a place to hide, but who would have thought that after arriving, he would sense the aura of many living people. However, these auras were not very strong. They were all at the spirit stream realm, and there were even many mortals. Lu Yi pondered for a moment and understood what was going on. The people here should be the people from the various human strongholds in the Hidden Realm. Yuan Xiang had said that there were people from their stronghold who had been taken away by the Hidden Realm. It seemed that the two of them were not very lucky. If they had not been attacked by the people of the Pure Land and stayed in that stronghold, they might have been able to meet them. Of course, the time was uncertain. They might have to wait for a long time. With this in mind, Lu Yi put away the Panshan saber and revealed himself from his concealed state. Seeing this, Ing Wu Ji also released his concealed state. He and Lu Yi looked at each other and suppressed their auras as much as possible. Then they openly pushed open the door and entered. The bottom of the boat was a very large bunk. At this moment there were many people inside. These people had been selected from various strongholds. Whether they were mortals or cultivators, they were all very excited. Because in today's world, almost everyone who was still alive had only one goal, and that was to enter the Hidden Realm. Entering the Hidden Realm meant that they would no longer have to worry about anything. Entering the Hidden Realm meant that they would have endless good food and endless cultivation resources. Joining the Mystic Realm meant that they could break away from their previous lives. Yuan Xiang was right. To the current human race, the Mystic Realm was like a holy land. When the door was pushed open, the noise inside stopped abruptly, and many pairs of eyes looked over. Lu Yi and Ing Wu Ji didn't care at all and simply walked straight in. Under everyone's puzzled gazes, they walked to a corner and sat down, appearing somewhat out of place. But after a while, the noise sounded again. The people here originally thought that the two of them were cultivators from the secret realm, so they didn't dare to make a noise. After they reacted, they mistakenly thought that the two of them were also being guided, so they didn't have too many concerns. There are quite a few of them. Ing Wu Ji quietly looked around. And most of them are teenagers. Not only that, but there were also many children. From the looks of it, the selection criteria of the Mystic Realm was not based on cultivation or talent, but mainly on age. The younger one was, the easier it was to be selected. The two of them were considered quite old in this place. But it was understandable. The younger one was, the more malleable they were, and the easier it was to teach them. Perhaps it was for this reason that the Mystic Realm had such a selection criteria. Lu Yi sat with his eyes closed. He seemed to be resting, but he was actually listening to the various conversations around him and gathering information. However, the conversations of the teenagers who had gathered from all over the world didn't have much practical content. Most of them were imagining the beautiful life after entering the Mystic Realm, letting their imaginations run wild, imagining how wonderful life would be in the Mystic Realm. There were also some children who were in low spirits because they missed their parents. However, no matter how young the children were, they didn't cry or make a fuss because of this. Because even they knew that when they left home, no one would pamper and coax them like their parents. From today onwards, they would either achieve meteoric success or fall into the dust. They could only rely on themselves to grasp the future. There was a lot of determination on the young faces. Ing Wu Ji got up and walked out. After a while, he returned and mysteriously handed a set of tattered clothes to Lu Yi. Change. In the entire cabin there were 200 or 300 people, and only the two of them seemed out of place. It wasn't just because they were older but also because of their clothes. The two's clothes weren't bright. After all, one was a weapon cultivator and the other was a ghost cultivator. They were both cultivators who pursued cultivation and didn't pay much attention to their clothes. But compared to the clothes of the people around, no matter how plain they looked, they still stood out. Wuxia noticed this and went to find someone with a similar build to him, and Lu Yi to change into 2 sets of clothes. With the lesson learned from the previous stronghold at Drunk Mountain, he didn't dare to take out anything good this time and only used 2 pieces of jerky. Lu Yi took the clothes that were washed white and casually changed into them, then waited quietly with Wuxia. After about an hour, the door to the cabin was pushed open again. This time 5 thin and small figures walked in. The oldest was only 13 or 14 years old, and the youngest was only 5 or 6 years old. It seemed that these were the candidates that the 2 guides had picked up from the nearby strongholds. After a while, the spirit ship trembled slightly and the conversation in the cabin came to an abrupt end. Then there was a burst of cheers as children of all ages rushed to the window. As the tremors continued, the spirit ship rose into the air and rushed to the next stronghold. The children who occupied the window looked at the rapidly passing scenery below and the fluttering white clouds in front of the window, each one of them unable to express their excitement. After the spirit ship left for an incense stick to burn, the door to the cabin was pushed open again and 2 figures appeared in everyone's field of vision. These 2 people didn't say a word, only throwing a few things into the room before turning around and leaving. Lu Yi saw clearly that these were several large pieces of beast meat, and from the color and the faint smell of blood, these beasts had not been cooked. The meat had not been cooked, it was all raw meat. But even so, the moment the 2 people left, the children in the cabin boiled with excitement. One figure after another pounced on the large pieces of raw meat. Some of them immediately took a bite, but as soon as they took a bite, someone next to them punched them to the ground and snatched away the food in their hands. The cabin, already noisy to begin with, became completely chaotic. The children from various strongholds seemed to have turned into ferocious beasts, all of them emitting a ferocious aura. Those with cultivation were naturally at an advantage, while those without cultivation were out of luck. Screams and wails rang out incessantly. This? Wuxia frowned at the sight. He couldn't imagine that these children would fight over a few large pieces of raw meat that had not been cooked. Just like that, there was even a little girl who had fallen to the ground, unable to get up and was trampled on. Just as he was about to make a move, a figure beside him flashed forward and reached out, pulling the little girl out of the crowd. The little girl was obviously frightened, her face pale. Even though she had been rescued, she couldn't help but tremble. She turned to look at Lu Yi who had rescued her and forgot to thank him. The large pieces of raw meat were quickly divided up. In the chaos, many children had bruised noses and swollen faces, and some were covered in blood. Those who got it were satisfied, while those who didn't were dejected. This was because they only provided 1 meal a day. If they didn't get it, it meant that they would have to starve for a day. Lu Yi. Wuxia's tone was somewhat grave. What the hell is this mystic realm? Through the ideas that Yuan Xiang had poured in before, he thought that the mystic realm of the unparalleled continent was the holy land of the human race. There was no need to worry about food, clothes, or cultivation resources. He also thought that the emissary of the mystic realm had chosen these people and brought them over to nurture them and continue the human race's torch. Yes, but looking at the big picture, just this alone made him feel that something was not quite right. The people in the mystic realm didn't seem to take the people in the stronghold seriously at all. Even if they provided food, it was as if they were feeding wild beasts. With such a way of doing things, it was simply a fool's dream to expect the people in the mystic realm to nurture them. He asked Lu Yi, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. Big brother, thank you. It was only now that the little girl who had been rescued by Lu Yi came back to her senses and thanked him. It was obvious that even a little girl born poor had a very good upbringing. Lu Yi shook his head slowly and took out a piece of jerky and handed it to her. Eat it. The little girl's eyes immediately lit up. She raised her head and glanced at Lu Yi. After confirming that it was for her, she grabbed it and lowered her head to gnaw on it. After a few bites, she stopped eating and stuffed the rest of the jerky into her arms. Obviously, she wanted to keep it for next time, so that she wouldn't go hungry if she couldn't snatch anything later. Wuxia tilted his head, his heart aching. He wanted to let the little girl eat all the jerky, but he didn't say it out loud. He and Lu Yi could protect this little girl for a while, but they couldn't protect her forever. Can I sleep here for a while? Although the little girl didn't know about worldly affairs, she knew that Lu Yi and Ing Wuji were two thighs. She knew nothing about cultivation, but Lu Yi and Ing Wuji's age was right there. They were the only people in this cabin. The two of them looked the oldest and they were definitely the most powerful. Sleep. This time, without waiting for Lu Yi to speak, Ing Wuji agreed. The little girl smiled sweetly and found a place beside Lu Yi. She lay down, curled up into a ball, and slept quietly. Soon her breathing evened out. The spirit ship would stop and set sail from time to time, and humans from the stronghold would constantly be brought over. After a few days there were no more newcomers. Lu Yi and Ing Wuji were looking forward to it. Both of them sensed that this trip was probably coming to an end. This meant that these cultivators from the mystic realm were about to return to the mystic realm. Brother Shun. Shun Zhongqing walked on the road. When he met people he knew, he would greet them or nod to them. But no matter who it was, no one had any extra expression on their faces, as if they were indifferent to everything. To this, Shun Zhongqing was already used to it, because this was the Demon Suppression Department, an organization that maintained the stability of the Great Qin. Their main duty was to kill demons and monsters. Of course, they also had some other side jobs. Could be said that, in the Demon Suppression Department, everyone's hands were stained with a lot of blood. When a person was used to life and death, they would become indifferent to many things. When he first came to this world, Shun Zhongqing was a little uncomfortable, but as time passed he got used to it. The Demon Suppression Department was very big. Those who could stay in the Demon Suppression Department were all powerful experts, or people who had the potential to become experts. Shun Zhongqing belonged to the latter. The Demon Suppression Department was divided into two occupations. One was the Guardian, the other was the Demon Exorcist. Anyone who entered the Demon Suppression Department would start from the lowest level, the Demon Exorcist. Then, they would advance step by step and finally have the chance to become a Guardian. Shun Zhongqing's previous life was a trainee Demon Exorcist in the Demon Suppression Department. He was also the lowest level Demon Exorcist. He had the memories of his previous life. He was also very familiar with the environment of the Demon Suppression Department. It didn't take long for Shun Zhongqing to stop in front of a pavilion. Different from the other places in the Demon Suppression Department that were filled with killing intent, this pavilion was like a crane in a flock of chickens. In the bloody Demon Suppression Department, it presented a different kind of tranquility. At this time, the pavilion's door was open, and people occasionally entered and exited. Shun Zhongqing only hesitated for a moment, then stepped in. Entering the pavilion, the environment suddenly changed. A wave of ink mixed with a faint smell of blood hit his face, causing his brows to instinctively furrow, but quickly relax. The smell of blood on everyone in the Demon Suppression Department was almost impossible to wash clean. Chapter 799. It's finally over. In the side room on the top of the ship, Zhou Yulong let out a long breath, and his expression was quite relieved. The people struggling to survive in the stronghold only felt that these cultivators from the secret realm were very powerful and noble. But how could they understand their bitterness? If they were not forced to, if it were not for the ancestral teachings, who would be willing to leave the safety of the secret realm and run out to be a guide? In today's world, outside of the secret realm, there was no safe place. Although they had the spirit ship to rely on along the way, they had repeatedly encountered the provocation of the Corpse Clan. There were many battles and there were several times when they were almost wiped out. In history, there were precedents of the secret realm spirit ship being destroyed by the Corpse Clan, and the entire party being wiped out. For cultivators like them who came from the secret realm and had been pampered since young, leaving the secret realm was equivalent to gambling with their lives. In the eyes of cultivators outside the secret realm, being a guide was a glorious job. No matter which stronghold they went to, the people in the stronghold would welcome them and warmly entertain them. However, for cultivators who came from the secret realm, no one was willing to easily touch them. However, if they wanted to climb to a high position in the secret realm, they had to do this job at least once. This was because the first-generation master of the secret realm had once set a rule that only by personally experiencing the difficulties of survival of the human race in the outside world Could they understand how to cherish everything in the secret realm? The Zhou clan he came from had a high position and power in the secret realm. They jointly controlled the secret realm with several other clans. He himself had outstanding talent and had a powerful cultivation at a young age. He was the most promising new star of the Zhou clan in the future. Now that he had the experience of being a guide, he would definitely be able to find a good job after returning. In the next 10 years, he even had the chance to compete for the position of the Zhou clan's patriarch. When that time came, how glorious would it be? The continent was shattered. Outside the arcane realm, the human race was struggling to survive. Inside the arcane realm, there was peace and prosperity. Even the cultivators, after reaching the limit of their cultivation, did not have the desire to continue cultivating. Their nature of fighting for power and profit was exposed. The world didn't know what kind of filthy places were hidden in the so-called Holy Land. If they knew, perhaps many people wouldn't be so eager to enter the Holy Land. Speaking of which, although Zhou Yulong was forced to go out and suffer because of the ancestral teachings, he still felt quite emotional after really making this trip. The life of the people outside was too tough. There were a few times when he couldn't help but want to pack up the people in the stronghold and take them away. The mystic realm was so big, it wasn't as if it couldn't accommodate those people. However, he could only think about it. If he really did it, it would be taboo. The secret realms were indeed huge and could accommodate many humans, but they couldn't accommodate all the remaining humans in the world, even if all 3 secret realms were opened. Therefore, he could only take in more youths and children within the scope of his authority. As for the fate of these people in the secret realm, it was not something that Zhou Yulong could worry about. At the very least, the environment in the secret realm was much better than the precarious outside. As long as they did not make too big of a mistake, staying alive was not a problem. In today's world, living was more important than anything else. As if thinking of something, Zhou Yulong suddenly called out, "Men!" Immediately, someone pushed open the door and entered. It was a female cultivator with delicate features. She was also a servant of the Zhou clan. She bowed and cupped her hands. "Sir, we're going back soon. Tell them to boil some hot water. Let the children bathe and bring them back clean. They can't stink like this." "Yes," the female cultivator replied, then turned and went to work. After a short while, the door to the bottom of the cabin was pushed open. A group of youths and children watched as the cultivators bustled about. In a short while, 10 wooden buckets filled with water were lined up in a row in the spacious area. A man stepped out with his hands behind his back. "Sir Yulong has taken pity on you and specially ordered us to prepare these, so that you can wash yourselves clean and enter the secret realm. You have 1 hour. Hurry up." With that, he impatiently turned and left. For someone like him, if it wasn't for the fact that he needed to do something, he wouldn't want to stay a moment longer in such a smelly environment. The cultivators also turned and left, leaving behind the group of youths and children looking at each other in dismay. In the new era, there was a shortage of survival materials including clean water. From childhood to adulthood, these people had to be very careful with the water they drank, let alone bathing. Many people might not even bathe once in 2 or 3 years. Now, looking at these 10 wooden buckets filled with clean water, many of them were not used to it. After a long while, someone stepped forward and cupped a handful of water with both hands, drinking it in large mouthfuls. In another moment, the 10 wooden buckets were surrounded by figures drinking water. Zhou Yulong naturally didn't expect that more than half of the clean water he ordered for bathing would end up in the stomachs of these youths and children. Only after everyone had drunk enough did they begin to bathe. The water was cold water. Even though Zhou Yulong ordered his subordinates to boil some hot water, who would go through the trouble for the lowly lives of a group of strongholds? In any case, Zhou Yulong wouldn't personally come down to investigate. No one fell into the wooden buckets. They all stood by the buckets and only took a small amount of water to wash their dirty bodies under their clothes. Saving everything that could be saved had already become an instinct engraved in their bones. "Big brother, aren't you going to bathe?" The little girl who had been saved by Lu Yi came back with her hair dripping wet. Seeing Lu Yi and Ing Wuji sitting there indifferently, she couldn't help but say, "You should go bathe. They say that whoever can wash clean will leave a good impression on those important people when they enter the hidden territory. Maybe they will take you as a disciple." "We don't need to. Ing Wuji smiled at the innocent little girl. Besides, we're both so old. Those important people probably won't take a liking to us. You just have to do your best. The little girl's expression immediately became hopeful. More than an hour later, the cultivators from before appeared and took away the wooden buckets. The middle-aged man who had spoken earlier also came in and shouted, "Little hairy ones, hurry up and get moving. We're home." This one sentence caused the entire cabin to boil. He shouted, "Don't make a ruckus, don't push. When you leave this place, behave yourselves. If anyone dares to break the rules, I'll teach them a lesson." Everyone immediately quieted down. Under his deterrence, the youths and children in the cabin formed a somewhat scattered line and walked out one after another. The little girl was about to call out to Lu Yi and Ing Wuji, but when she turned her head, the two of them were already gone. She couldn't help but jump in fright, almost wondering if she had seen a ghost. The spirit ship had already docked on a bare mountain peak. Zhou Yulong was standing side by side with the woman who had acted with him before. He held a golden plate in his hand and looked down. Before leaving the hidden territory, the Zhou clan patriarch had already told him that he had to arrive here at a specific time and wait here, because at this time the hidden territory would drift to this place. At this position, with the help of the special spirit weapon in Zhou Yulong's hand, he could open the door to the hidden territory. If he missed this time, even if it was a cultivator from the Zhou clan like Zhou Yulong, it would be extremely difficult for him to return to the hidden territory. The golden plate in his hand was the spirit weapon that opened the door to the hidden territory. There were two golden plates, one yin and one yang. Zhou Yulong activated the power of the golden plate, and the person in the hidden territory who had the corresponding golden plate would be able to sense it and check the situation outside. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he could open the door. Such caution was naturally to prevent the golden plate from falling into the hands of the corpse clan. If the door was opened without further investigation, it would be over if the corpse clan attacked. On the mountain peak, Zhou Yulong waited impatiently. He looked at the golden plate in his hand and looked at the sky. It wasn't until the sun was high in the sky that his expression shook, and he let out a long breath. The time has come. As he spoke, he channeled his spirit energy into the golden plate. In an instant, golden light shone brightly on the mountain peak. All the cultivators couldn't help but narrow their eyes. The golden light flowed like a real object. There seemed to be a crack in the void, allowing the golden light to flow into it. The light continued to dim. Zhou Yulong nervously stared at the place where the golden light flowed. After a long while, the originally dim golden light suddenly became bright. Zhou Yulong's heart relaxed, knowing that someone was waiting for him in the hidden territory. The golden light continued to surge, and then turned into a door, standing upright on the mountain peak. The door was not big, and could allow 3 or 4 people to enter side by side. Beside the door frame, golden light flowed, and it was magnificent. "Everyone, thank you for your hard work. I'll go first," Zhou Yulong said and led the woman beside him. With one step he stepped into the door. The door was like the mouth of a ferocious beast. The moment the two of them stepped in, it disappeared. In the Silver Snake Valley hidden territory, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was abundant. In front of the golden door, cultivators from several great clans stood guard. In addition to these cultivators on the surface, there were many people hiding in the dark. This place was also covered by a large formation. Within the hidden territory, the security at the door was the tightest. Throughout the year, there were large numbers of cultivators standing guard, whether in the open or in the dark. Although there had never been any accidents in all these years, it was still necessary to be on guard. A few hundred years ago, the number of cultivators guarding this place was more than 5 times more than now. However, as time passed, the security here eventually became lax. Yulong. Seeing Zhou Yulong's figure, a middle-aged man with a heroic figure greeted him. Seeing how he addressed Zhou Yulong, it was obvious that this person was also from the Zhou clan. "Third uncle." Zhou Yulong bowed to the middle-aged man. Third uncle immediately reached out to help him up. He looked him up and down, patted his shoulder and praised, "You've had a hard journey." Zhou Yulong said, "It's my duty. Third uncle is too serious." While they were exchanging greetings on the other side, the woman who came back with Zhou Yulong was also greeted by her clansmen. The woman's name was Ning Tong Tong, and she came from the Ning clan, one of the great clans in the Hidden Territory. The Zhou clan and the Ning clan had been on good terms for generations, and there were many marriages between them. The elders of the two clans now had the intention of matchmaking the two of them, so this time, the two of them were in charge of receiving them. Chapter 800. Inside the Secret Realm, the cultivators on duty from the Zhou clan and the Ning clan welcomed them warmly. Zhou Yulong and Ning Tong Tong, while the people from the other three clans were indifferent. They watched from the sidelines. The golden door stood tall, and people kept walking out from it. Those humans who had come to the secret realm for the first time had never felt such a dense spirit chi of heaven and earth, and had never smelled such a clear aura before. Although their faces were filled with excitement and shock, they suppressed the excitement in their hearts and did not dare to make a ruckus or become restless. The cultivators in charge of receiving this group of people led them to the side one by one. The first place they had to go to in the secret realm was the Enlightenment Division. Regardless of whether they had a cultivation base or not, they had to stay in the Enlightenment Division for 3 years or even longer. The Enlightenment Division would teach them the many rules of survival in the secret realm, and at the same time, instill them with the idea of the 5 great clans being supreme. Only by passing some of the tests of the Enlightenment Division could they leave that place, or be chosen by the large and small clans to become servants, or be sent to various places to do manual labor. After thousands of years, the human race seemed to have been divided into 2 parts: the human race of the secret realm and the human race of the stronghold. In the eyes of the former, the latter were mostly wild beasts that drank raw meat and drank blood. In such an environment, it would be extremely difficult for the human race to make a name for themselves if they were taken into the secret realm. The matter of receiving people went smoothly at first, and the humans of the stronghold walked in one by one. Ing Wuji mixed in with the crowd and activated his concealment technique. As soon as he stepped in, the children in front and behind him did not notice at all. Almost at the same time that Ing Wuji stepped into the Silver Snake Valley secret realm, the golden light standing on the ground suddenly shone brightly. The golden light was like a sea shining in all directions. In the sea of light, Ing Wuji's figure suddenly appeared. The people of the Zhou clan and the Ning clan who were talking suddenly turned their heads to look. The cultivators on duty from the other clans also revealed astonished expressions. For a moment they did not react to what had happened. On the other hand, Ing Wuji's reaction was extremely fast. Although he didn't know what kind of method this door had to break through his concealment technique, the moment his figure appeared, he had already flown into the air and fled into the distance. "Merge with me," a stern voice rang out. The cultivators on duty in the secret realm finally regained their senses. The main reason was that in all these years, no one had ever trespassed into the mystic realm without permission. This was the first time they encountered such a thing, so their reaction was slow by half a beat. When Ing Wuji leaped, several cultivators joined forces to activate the great formation that covered the area. In a split second, the stars moved and the scenery changed. Ing Wuji, who was in the air, felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. He fell straight down. At this moment, Ing Wuji could be said to be both shocked and angry. Originally, he was confident in his concealment skills and wanted to sneak into this secret realm quietly. Who would have thought that as soon as he entered, his whereabouts would be exposed and he would fall into the enemy's great array. As he fell, he saw streaks of golden light shooting toward him from all directions. They were rope-shaped spirit artifacts. His heart thumped wildly. He knew that he couldn't let these spirit artifacts touch him. At first glance, he could tell that these spirit artifacts were similar to the dragon binding rope. They had the effect of binding and capturing people. He hurriedly urged his spiritual energy to forcefully twist his body. However, several figures had already charged out. Each of them surged with spiritual energy and attacked him wildly. Ing Wuji was a little dazed from the attacks and his heart was unsettled. There are more people. Another cry of surprise rang out. It was Lu Yi, who had followed behind Ing Wuji, who had also been exposed. He frowned. Although he didn't know what the problem was, he understood that the mystic realm probably had some method to monitor people who wanted to sneak in. Or perhaps the mystic realm had some special ability that left some kind of mark on the humans who had been received. Those who had this mark would be safe and sound in the mystic realm. Those who didn't have this mark would have nowhere to hide. Lu Yi vaguely felt that it was the latter. He had just arrived here and didn't understand the situation. Moreover, his original intention in coming to the mystic realm was to borrow the power of the mystic realm cultivators to fight against the corpse race. Naturally, he couldn't start a massacre and make things too tense. Therefore, he immediately activated the insight spirit inscriptions to enhance his eyes and observe the nodes of the great array. He just happened to seeing Wuji being tied up tightly by rope-like spirit artifacts. He fell pathetically from the air. With Wuji's problem solved, many of the cultivators on duty immediately joined forces to attack Lu Yi. Lu Yi hesitated for a moment and didn't choose to save Wuji. Instead, he turned and ran in a certain direction. Several array flags appeared in his hand and he raised his hand to throw them out. The formation flag swayed in midair. As Lu Yi channeled his spirit energy, a hole was torn in the formation. He rushed out of the formation's range in a flash and fled into the air. Wuji, who was tied up on the ground and couldn't move, saw this scene and his heart turned cold. Inexplicably, a sentence appeared in his mind. Husband and wife are birds in the same forest, but when disaster strikes, they fly separately. Luya, this bastard, abandoning him was a little too decisive. However, he knew in his heart that in this situation, Luya's best choice was to escape immediately. Otherwise, when the battle started, not to mention whether he could save him, if he really killed someone, it wouldn't be good for them. As for whether Luya would fall here, Wuji didn't think about it. After him, more than 10 cultivators on duty chased after Luya's figure. The rest of the cultivators were on high alert just in case. Among the 5 great clans, a cultivator from the Wei clan shouted, "Zhou Yulong, who did you bring back?" Zhou Yulong was dumbfounded. Who could he have brought back? This time, when he and Ning Tongtong went out, the ones who brought along were all troublesome youths and children. Those 2 people came from the medical field. She had never even seen these 2 people before. However, he knew in his heart that if he didn't solve this problem properly, then not only would all his hard work be wasted, it would also affect his future prospects. Thinking of this, he looked at Wuji and his expression darkened. The Silver Snake Valley secret realm, which had been peaceful for nearly 1,000 years, suddenly became lively. In the sky and on the ground, groups of cultivators patrolled everywhere, as if they were looking for something. At the beginning, the large and small clans in the secret realm didn't know what was going on, but there was no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. The news of an enemy invading the secret realm spread like wildfire. Although one of them was captured on the spot, there was still one free and unfettered outside. If they didn't find this person, how could the people in the secret realm be at ease? However, even if the cultivators in the secret realm dug 3 feet into the ground, they still couldn't find any trace of that person. For this reason, Wuji, who was captured, suffered a lot. In order to pry open his mouth and investigate Lu Ye's information, the Silver Snake Valley's people immediately began to torture Wuji, who was imprisoned in the Serene Prison. The secret realm of the Drama Continent, according to Yen Wu, could be considered a small world. It was just that its body wasn't as vast as the Wuxia continent. The outside world was ravaged by the Corpse Clan, and the Human Clan had no place to stand. However, this place was not affected at all. It was a bustling and auspicious scene. In the entire Silver Snake Valley secret realm, there were large cities and small cities. The largest 5-element city was the place where the 5 great clans resided. It was also the central area of the entire secret realm. 16 small cities were distributed around 5-element city. They were arranged according to a fixed pattern like a crescent moon, as if they were secretly in some kind of formation. However, such a huge formation was completely unable to be activated by the current strength of the 5 great clans. That was the method left behind by the Divine Sea Realm cultivators before the Wuxia continent was shattered. At this moment, within an empty house in 5-element city, Lu Yi sat silently on an armchair while playing with something that seemed like a crystal in his hand, and he had a leisurely expression. The Silver Snake Valley secret realm had sent out a large number of people to search for his traces. However, no one would have thought that he actually sneaked into 5-element city quietly, right under the noses of the 5 great clans. The object in his hand was the Tianji pillar that had been preserved by Tianji through some inexplicable method. The moment he entered the Wushuang continent, Lu Yi received instructions from Tianji to save this broken Wushuang continent. This was undoubtedly an arduous and dangerous task. Otherwise, Tianji would not have prepared such a luxurious lineup. After coming to the Wushuang continent, he learned a lot of information. However, Lu Yi still did not have much clue on how to save this world. He originally wanted to unite the power of the 3 secret realms and work together to eradicate the Corpse clan. This way, the crisis of this world could be resolved. However, if he wanted to do this, there would be many difficulties. Other things aside, just look at the Silver Snake Valley secret realm. The cultivators were already used to such a life, and did not have any thoughts of leaving this place to fight against the Corpse clan in the outside world. What could Lu Yi use to move them and make them bear the risk of losing their lives? Lu Yi was not sure about the situation of the other 2 secret realms. However, he was sure that even if he talked until his mouth was dry, he would not be able to move them. It was even more unrealistic to use force. After all, he was alone. Even if he counted Ing Wuji, there were only 2 of them. Moreover, Ing Wuji had fallen into the hands of others. At this moment, Feng Yu had a vague feeling. The 9 Continents Tower still had not solved the problem of the 3 forces. Only the cultivators of the 9 continents had the courage to face the Corpse clan. The Tianji pillar that was sealed in his hand was the best answer. Tianji had already handed the solution to the problem to him. It was just that he had not seen it clearly. He stood up and pulled out the Panshan saber. He dug a hole in the ground in front of him. Then he planted the sealed Tianji pillar in his hand and filled the hole with soil. As the saying goes, you reap what you sow today. He planted a Tianji pillar here. In the future, he would probably be able to grow a Tianji pillar. After doing all this, he took out the sound transmission stone to contact Ing Wuji. Without needing to borrow the power of the Silver Snake Valley, he would have fewer restrictions when doing things. No matter what, Ing Wuji was now his companion. Previously, he had no choice but to save him. Now it was time to save him. Chapter 801. In 5 Elements City, in a grand hall, many figures were seated. There were only a dozen or so people in the hall. However, these dozen people were the 5 great clans that jointly controlled the Silver Snake Valley secret realm. Every one of them had a high position. The people of the 5 great clans all had the goal of stepping into this hall. Zhou Yulong originally had hope. However, if this matter could not be resolved properly, then forget about stepping into this hall in the future. He might not even have the chance to become the Zhou clan's patriarch. Although the Silver Snake Valley secret realm was jointly controlled by the 5 great clans, a snake could not do without a head. Hence, they still needed a master of the secret realm. The ancestors of the 5 great clans had once set a rule that the position of the master of the secret realm would be taken by the 5 great clans' patriarchs in turns every 10 years. This round's master of the secret realm was the Chu clan's patriarch Chu Rui. He sat in the most central position. On his left and right sides were the patriarchs of the other 4 great clans. Below them were the 5 great clans' patriarchs in their respective areas. There were 2 people from each clan. These 15 people were the highest level of the entire Silver Snake Valley secret realm. At this moment, there was a storage bag and a crystal-like item that was being passed around in the hands of a group of people. Everyone who finished checking the storage pouch had a serious expression on their faces. There was no other reason. Although there were not many things in the storage bag, every single item was enough to move them, especially those elixirs. Each of them was of excellent quality. It could be seen that the alchemist who refined these elixirs was extremely skilled. The alchemists of the Silver Snake Valley could not be compared to the other party. There were also those spirit weapons and spirit fruits that even they couldn't name. The group of people were all people of high position. When they saw the items in the storage bag today, they could not help but feel that their horizons had been broadened. It was hard to believe that there were such things in this world. If the Silver Snake Valley had an alchemist who could refine such elixirs, then the younger generation would definitely grow faster. What we can confirm is that these 2 people came from the other 2 secret realms. As for which one, we have no way of knowing for now. An old man suddenly said. This kind of wealth was not something that a cultivator from a stronghold could possess. Moreover, the concealment methods that Ing Wuji and Lu Yi had displayed before were also extraordinary. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone who was received had it on them, because of the imprint, the two of them would not be exposed. Perhaps someone else could sneak in without them noticing. Could it be someone from the Ziwei Dao Palace? Someone frowned and guessed. Ziwei Daoist Palace has been thinking about counterattacking the corpse race all these years, and they have repeatedly negotiated with us in Mount Meru. Could it be that they have lost their patience and are plotting something? It's just two people. What kind of scheme can they come up with? There's one thing that puzzles me. Could it be that these two people don't know that rashly entering like this will expose their whereabouts? If they were really from the Ziwei Dao Palace, they would not have been so reckless. However, based on the information they had gathered, the two of them were clearly surprised after being exposed, as if they did not expect to be exposed. This kind of reaction did not seem to be from a mystic realm, but more like a cultivator from a stronghold outside. But which stronghold's cultivator could have such a high net worth? It was impossible for people outside to have such good things. Compared to the things in the storage bag, I'm more interested in this thing. Another old man pinched the stone-like object. What is this? A spirit artifact does not look like a spirit artifact, but there are traces of refinement. When I pour my spirit power into it, there are some strange reactions. Ing Wuji had been captured, so his things were naturally confiscated. Apart from the storage bag, there was also a crystal that he carried with him. However, no matter how the group studied it, no one could recognize what it was. This is a sound transmission stone. An unfamiliar voice suddenly rang out in the hall. Everyone was stunned, because this voice did not belong to any of them. Soon, everyone reacted and looked at the strange crystal. That voice was clearly coming from the crystal. The old man holding the crystal trembled, and the stone almost fell to the ground. In such a large hall, it was so quiet that even a needle could fall. Everyone's eyes met, and it was difficult to hide the shock in their hearts. A sound transmission stone. This thing was only in legends. It was said that before the heavens transformation, the unparalleled continent also had this kind of thing. Cultivators could use this item to communicate with each other from far away. However, after the heavens transformation, the method to refine this item had long been lost. Even the three great mystic realms did not have the ability to refine it. Who would have thought that today, everyone would see such a legendary item? Thinking back to the various information about the sound transmission stone, everyone immediately reacted. At this moment, there must be someone holding the corresponding sound transmission stone, and was communicating with them somewhere. When the old man channeled his spirit energy into the sound transmission stone, the conversation between them was transmitted to the other party's ears without missing a single word. Everyone was furious. Even though they didn't read any confidential information, it was still embarrassing for them to be eavesdropped on like this. You are the person who entered the mystic realm? The old man holding the crystal urged his spirit power and asked the sound transmission stone. Everyone else listened closely. There was a quick response, "That's me." The old man sneered, "You are so young, but your courage is not small. Trespassing into my Silver Snake Valley mystic realm. And now you dare to take the initiative to contact us?" According to the information they received, the two people who broke into the mystic realm were not young. They were all quite young, especially the one who ran away. His cultivation seemed to be at the 8th order Cloud River realm. His strength was not bad, and his speed was quite fast. More than a dozen cultivators on duty at the gate had chased after him, but they were soon left behind. Lu Ye's voice sounded from the sound transmission stone. "I have a companion who has fallen into your hands. I would like to trouble you to let him go. As for the conditions, you can name them. I will agree to anything that can be fulfilled. Do you think you can escape? No matter where you are from, I will find the Silver Snake Valley mystic realm. You will not have a good ending. If you know what's good for you, you will obediently show yourself and you will suffer less. If you are caught, your life and death will not be up to you." The old man snorted. Everyone else was silent, allowing the old man to communicate with Lu Yi. Obviously, they all tacitly agreed with his words. From their standpoint, they naturally would not let Ing Wuji go so easily, and Lu Yi was also someone they had to capture. No matter what, they had to figure out the origins of these two people, and if possible find out the method to refine the sound transmission stone. If they could figure this out, it would be much easier to contact the cultivators in the mystic realm in the future. I understand. A sentence came from the other side of the sound transmission stone, and there was no more sound. No matter how the old man urged his spirit chi to communicate, there was no response. The old man was so angry that he almost crushed the sound transmission stone. The newborn calf is not afraid of the tiger. Someone mocked. Lu Yi was only at the 8th order Cloud River realm, so they did not put him in their eyes. Although the Silver Snake Valley Mystic Realm did not dare to go out and fight against the corpse race, the strength they had accumulated over the years was not to be underestimated. Even if he was proficient in concealment, what could he do? If he really dared to show himself, he would only follow in his companion's footsteps. After a while, the meeting ended and everyone dispersed. In a house in the east of the city, Wei Wuguang returned. Chapter 802. Since entering Five Elements City, Yi had begun to secretly spy on the situation, and Lu Yi had more or less learned about it. He knew about the situation in Five Elements City and the status of the five great families. He wanted to save Ing Wuji, but the five great families were not willing to let him go, and even had ideas about him, so there was only one thing he could do: give them a taste of their own medicine. Capture one person from each of the five great families in exchange for Ing Wuji. This wasn't a difficult task for him. As for breaking into the dungeon and rescuing Ing Wuji, he did not know the exact location of the dungeon. It must be heavily guarded, and even with his ability, he might not be able to escape. Come, remember the website. Such a large sealed world that could exist for thousands of years must have its own heritage. You came here to take this old master in exchange for your companion? Wei Wuguang was old and cunning. Although he had just met Lu Yi, he had seen through his intentions. Why not? Lu Yi gently stroked the hilt of his saber. Wei Wuguang was not annoyed and instead laughed. I never thought that this old master would be looked down upon by others. Ho! His laughter suddenly stopped and his tone became cold. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, yet you dare to come to my Wei kingdom. Impudent! As soon as he finished speaking, the spirit energy around his body boiled, and an extremely powerful aura burst out from his seemingly old body. His aura was so powerful that it was like his vitality was burning like the sun. Without seeing how he moved, he had already arrived in front of Lu Yi, and stretched out his hand towards Lu Ye's head. He grabbed towards the top of Lu Ye's head. Although he knew from the available intelligence that Lu Yi was only a Cloud River Realm 8th Order cultivator, he did not show the slightest bit of mercy. After living for so many years, he knew that even a lion would use its full strength to catch a rabbit, so even when facing opponents whose cultivation was lower than his, he would never underestimate them. This was why he was able to stand out in the Wei family when he was young, and sit on the patriarch's seat. What's more, this young man in front of him was too important, and he had been thinking about how to take advantage of this situation. If he could capture him here, he might be able to get a lot of secrets out of him. However, the moment he made his move, his heart jumped, and he felt an inexplicable sense of unease. A feeling of safety quickly spread in his heart. Before he could react, a fiery red saber light slashed in front of him. Ah! Wei Wuguang cried out in alarm. His body, which was darting forward, suddenly changed direction like a broken piece of cloth. Like a bag flying out, blood splattering in the air. Rumble! He crashed into the screen at the side and fell heavily to the ground. When he got up in a hurry, his expression became serious. He looked at Lu Yi, who was slowly getting up from his chair, as if he had seen a ghost. Wei Wuguang subconsciously wanted to ask something, but when the words reached his mouth he didn't know what to say. She knew what she should ask. What's wrong with this young man? He was clearly only an 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, so how could he possess such abundant spirit energy? Such a powerful force, such a quick reaction? His strength was already at the peak of this world. However, when the young man stood up, he seemed to have lost all his strength. He saw a tall mountain, and the figure of the other party, which was not very tall, gave him an unforgettable feeling. Illusion. The indescribable pressure tightened his body, making him involuntarily recall the burdens of his youth. Ren Jian encountered an encounter when he was out. At that time, he had encountered the Iron Corpse commander under the Corpse Fiend, and the group of cultivators who had accompanied him had been wiped out. They were all slaughtered. In the end, he had no choice but to activate a life-saving Fey to escape. Tribulation. The distant memories churned in his heart, and he once again felt the taste of fear. The big hand that had originally grabbed Lu Yi was trembling violently, and there was a bloody wound on his palm. If he hadn't reacted quickly just now, he was afraid that this hand would have been gone. It turned out that he was the one who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Many thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning, and Wei Wuguang's figure suddenly retreated. He was about to break through the wall and leave this place. Although they had only exchanged blows for a moment, he could already feel the strength of the young man in front of him. If they were of the same age, he might still have the heart to compete with the other party, but after a long time he was in a high position and he was old. How could he still have the heart to compete? As the saying goes, the older a person is, the less courage they have. However, with this collision it was as if he had hit an invisible barrier, and it was forcibly bounced back. A spirit array? Wei Wuguang's face suddenly changed. He didn't know when this place had been set up. He suddenly understood. No wonder the rest of the Wei family didn't react to the change here. It had been concealed by the spirit array. He looked at the young man not far in front of him with lowered eyes and a saber in hand, walking towards him step by step. Wei Wuguang said straightforwardly, "Little friend, stop. What do you want to do? This old man will cooperate with you." This old man is so tactful? Lu Yi raised his eyebrows and nodded slightly. Then come with me. After a short while, the people of the Wei clan saw a scene that made them extremely surprised. They saw a waist, the young man with a long saber strode in front with his head held high, and their family head followed behind as they walked out. Those servants of low status naturally didn't dare to ask too much, and only bowed respectfully to Wei Wuguang. Many of the Wei family's cultivators wanted to ask something, but they were all dismissed by Wei Wuguang in advance. It wasn't until they walked out of the Wei family's residence that Wei Wuguang let out a heavy breath and looked at the figure in front of him with a complicated expression. The other party didn't use any means to restrain him, and he even turned his back to him. It was as if he didn't care whether he would sneak attack him or not. As they walked out of the Wei family's residence, Wei Wuguang struggled in his heart several times, but in the end, he didn't dare to take the risk. To be honest, he didn't even test how powerful the young man in front of him was, because he was a little powerless to resist a casual slash from the other party. The other party was so fearless. Either he was really stupid or he believed in his own strength. From the way he dared to sneak into the Wei family's residence alone and set up the array in advance, it was obviously not the former. In other words, he had absolute confidence in his own strength. If they really fell out, not to mention whether they could smoothly take down the other party, the Wei family would definitely suffer heavy casualties. As the head of the Wei family, he didn't dare to take the risk. After leaving the Wei family's residence, he didn't have the capital to take the risk, and could only accept his fate. Fortunately, he had seen through the other party's thoughts and knew that the other party only wanted to save people, and he didn't feel any killing intent from the other party. Was this young man from Mount Meru or Ziwei Daoist Palace? It was very likely the latter. Only Ziwei Daoist Palace could cultivate such a talent. They walked all the way and soon arrived at a private house. Lu Yi pushed open the door and entered. Although Wei Wuguang was unwilling, he could only follow. Stepping into the courtyard, Wei Wuguang's body tensed up, as if he had entered a dragon's den. There was clearly no one in the courtyard. He suddenly realized that there was an extremely shocking formation set up in this courtyard. Now that he had entered it, now that he had entered the array, his life and death were really in the other party's hands. Little friend, the Silver Snake Valley Mystic Realm is jointly controlled by the 5 great families. Even if you capture me, it's useless. Who knows, someone might take the opportunity to anger you and use you to achieve their own goals. Little friend, you have to keep your eyes open for some unspeakable motives. Wei Wuguang spoke earnestly, afraid that Lu Yi wouldn't know. He was fooled by Lu Yi, who didn't understand the situation here. And at this moment, he also addressed Lu Yi in a much friendlier manner. I know. Lu Yi nodded and looked at him meaningfully. You'll have a companion soon. All right. With a companion, Wei Wuguang's eyes twitched. He obviously realized something and wanted to speak again. Lu Yi had already turned and left. Leaving me alone? Wei Wuguang wanted to be angry and laugh at the same time. Even if there was really some shocking array here, the other party didn't have anyone to watch over him. He didn't take him seriously at all. As the thought flashed through his mind, he turned around and saw a whole body squatting on a chair. A snow-white shiny little tiger cub. Their eyes met and surprise flashed across Wei Wuguang's eyes. He could see that Hu Po was extraordinary. He only vaguely felt that this shouldn't be an ordinary demon beast. It wasn't that no one was watching over him, but that the other party had left a demon beast here. But what could a demon beast do? Just as he was thinking this, he saw the little tiger cub use its claws to grab the array flag beside it. It gently waved the flag at him. Wait! Wei Wuguang raised his hand to stop it, but it was already too late. Thick fog rolled and completely enveloped him. There was murderous intent surging all around, making him not dare to move at all. A demon beast that could activate an array. In the fog, Wei Wuguang was completely dumbfounded. He only felt that what he saw was simply bizarre. At such an old age, he had really never seen such a spiritual demon beast. Outside the great array, Yi suddenly appeared, also holding an array flag in her hand. Wei Wuguang thought that Lu Yi had only left a demon beast here to watch over him. Hu Po wasn't the only one, Yi was there too. With the array he had personally set up, Yi and Hu Po could attack and retreat. If they encountered any accidents, they would have the ability to protect themselves. Looking after Wei Wuguang was naturally no problem. In the fog, Wei Wuguang didn't dare to move recklessly, afraid that he would accidentally trigger some array. He quietly sat down cross-legged. About 2 hours later, the fog in front of them suddenly tumbled. Before Wei Wuguang could react, a figure had already broken through the fog and crashed towards him. Wei Wuguang subconsciously thought that he had been ambushed. He raised his hand and pushed it forward. Spiritual power surged. This palm directly imprinted on the other party's chest. Wah! The other party opened his mouth, and blood mist sprayed onto Wei Wuguang's head and face. Hearing a familiar voice and looking up to see a familiar face, Wei Wuguang's eyelids twitched violently. Long Yu? Old Wei, you want to kill me? Long Yu was unable to restrain his anger, but he was already heavily injured. Wei Wuguang had mercilessly slapped his body. At this moment he didn't even have the strength to get up. How did you react halfway through Wei Wuguang's words? This was obviously the companion that the youth had caught for him. After he had suffered under the other party's evil hands, Long Yu was no exception. What shocked him the most was that this efficiency was too fast. Ever since that young man left, he had already left. It had only been 2 hours. Moreover, this was Long Yu. Lu 1. Chapter 803. Among the 5 great families there were many experts. In the Wei family he was considered the strongest. But in the Long family, the strongest was not the Long family's patriarch, but Long Yu. His strength was even higher than Wei Wuxuang's, and in the entire Silver Snake Valley, he was considered the strongest. Because of his unrestrained nature, he did not want to be entangled with worldly affairs, so he did not sit on the patriarch's seat. He only held the position of an elder in the family. But at this moment, the strongest expert in the Silver Snake Valley was lying in front of him like a dead dog. Wei Wuxuang sized him up and clearly saw the few knife wounds on his body. How could he not know that Long Yu had suffered a great loss in the hands of that youth? From the injuries on Long Yu's body, it seemed that the youth had only used 3 knives. Wei Wuxuang was horrified and glad. He was horrified because the youth's strength seemed to be beyond his imagination. Fortunately, he was tactful enough to cooperate early on when he saw that the situation was not good. Otherwise, Long Yu would not be the only one lying on the ground now. Although the 5 great families usually fought openly and secretly, they naturally had to be of one mind when facing an external enemy. Wei Wuxuang quickly took out a healing pill to help Long Yu recover. At the same time, he explained the current situation to Long Yu. Long Yu was speechless. He had never thought that there would be a day when he would be reduced to a prisoner. Time passed. The small courtyard gradually became lively in the large array. After Wei Wuxiang and Long Yu, Zhou Ding of the Zhou family came, Ning Bairan of the Ning family came, and Chu Anhe of the Chu family also came. 5 great families, 1 person from each family, no more, no less, no more, neatly arranged. It was only half a day. And the 5 people who were captured were all the top experts of their respective families. Among them, other than Long Yu, who was seriously injured, the other injuries were not serious. It could be said that they were the model of a wise man who understood the situation. After talking about their experience of being captured, the 5 of them were silent and their mood was heavy. That youth could enter and leave the residences of the 5 great families, as if he was in an uninhabited land. He was proficient in array formation and had powerful strength. Such a person, even the most outstanding cultivator in the history of the Silver Snake Valley, could not be compared to him. Fortunately, the 5 of them knew Lu Ye's purpose, so although they were trapped in the array, they were not too panicked. With that young man's strength, if he really wanted to kill them, they would have died long ago. Although Lu Yi was cautious in his actions, there had been a succession of cultivators from the 5 great clans who had either mysteriously disappeared or left of their own accord. This was especially so when they were at the Wei clan. He had led Wei Wuguang straight out of the Wei clan's main gate. Such an abnormal situation naturally could not escape the investigation of the cultivators of the 5 great clans. He didn't want to hide anything. Now that the 5 great clans had hostages in their hands, it was time to talk to them. In a small courtyard, Lu Yi sat upright on an armchair, the mountain coiling saber nimbly flying up and down, carving a crystal in his hand. The quiet and peaceful courtyard was suddenly shrouded in a murderous aura. The sound of clothes fluttering could be heard, and spiritual energy surged. Figures stood on the walls of the courtyard, looking down at him from above. Their expressions were full of vigilance, as if they were facing a great enemy. The door of the small courtyard was kicked open. Led by an old man, a group of cultivators with surging auras strode in. In an instant, the small courtyard was so crowded that not even a drop of water could trickle through. However, Lu Yi did not seem to notice as he continued to focus on the crystal in his hand. The mountain coiling saber nimbly trembled with an extremely small amplitude, causing fragments of the crystal to fly everywhere. The eyes of the group of people who came aggressively lit up as they all looked at the crystal in Lu Ye's hand. Wasn't this the sound transmission stone? Looking at this young man's posture, it seemed that the sound transmission stone was made by him. For a moment, many people were tempted, and their expressions became fervent as they looked at Lu Yi. The old man in the lead pondered for a moment, slightly restrained the hostility on his face, and said, "Little friend, where are you from? How should I address you?" If Lu Yi was only powerful, then it was nothing. However, if he could really refine the sound transmission stone, then it would be of great value to the Silver Snake Valley secret realm. At the very least, with this thing, the communication between the cultivators in the Silver Snake Valley would become much more convenient in the future. "Are you the person in charge here?" Lu Yi did not raise his head and asked casually. The old man smiled and nodded. This old man is Chu Ruyu, the head of the Chu family, and also the valley master of the Silver Snake Valley. I can be considered the master of this secret realm. You can make the decision here. Yes. Only then did Lu Yi raise his head to look at him. Immediately, with a wave of his hand, spiritual power surged, and the fog in the center of the small courtyard that was wrapped in fog quickly dispersed, revealing 5 figures trapped in the array. Patriarch. Elder. There was a burst of exclamations. Although the people of the 5 great clans had basically confirmed that the missing experts of their clans had been brought here through some clues, speculating was one thing, and seeing it with their own eyes was another. Moreover, at this moment, it seemed that the 5 people trapped in the array were almost all injured. Among them, the strongest, Long Yu, was the most seriously injured. Their hearts trembled, and they looked at Lu Yi with unkind and puzzled expressions. This young man really had guts. The 5 great families, no one was left behind, and a total of 5 people were captured here. This young man was really capable. In just half a day he had done such a thing. Little friend, you mean? Chu Ruoyu stroked his beard and looked at Lu Yi. Although he had guessed it in his heart, he still had to ask. You have my people in your hands and I have your people in my hands. Let's make a deal. You let my people go, and I will also let your people go. Sure enough, however, this young man did not hesitate to break into the residences of the 5 great families for the sake of one of his companions, and captured an important powerhouse from each family. It could be seen that he was also a righteous person. Chu Ruoyu's thoughts turned and he smiled slightly. This matter can be discussed, but before that, before he finished speaking, the weapon box at Lu Ye's waist suddenly buzzed, and a stream of light shot out, directly attacking one of the 5 people trapped in the array. No one expected such an unforeseen event to occur. Only the person who was attacked felt a great sense of danger. However, just as he was about to resist, an inexplicable power descended from the sky, making him unable to move as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. With a light puchi, the imperial weapon pierced through the right side of the person's chest, bringing with it a burst of hot blood, which turned into a stream of light and returned to the weapon box at Lu Ye's waist. After the upgrade of the Mountain Pandao last time, Lu Yi had also changed his imperial weapons to magical weapons. Although there were only 3 of them in terms of killing power and power, they were much stronger than before. With the help of the array, how could the person he attacked resist? And he? Someone shouted and couldn't help but take a step forward. It was a powerhouse of the Chu family, but his body suddenly froze, and he shifted his gaze with difficulty, looking at the young man who was still sitting there. The moment he moved, he felt as if he was a sheep being targeted by a wolf, and a great danger was looming over him, making him feel that if he dared to take another step forward, he would die without a burial ground. Of the 5 people trapped in the array, Chu and he groaned, his hand accidentally covering his chest, and his face trembled incessantly. Why was it me? Why was it me? There were 5 people who were captured, so why was the young man the only one who hurt him? This kind of injury was not fatal, but the change in that moment was enough to show that the young man had the ability to take their lives at any time. The pretense of peace in Chu Ruoyu's eyes disappeared, and they became cold. How could he not know that this was a warning from the young man? Because he was a member of the Chu family, the other party attacked the Chu family. I will only talk about this matter, and there is no need to mention anything else. I want to see my companions within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. His tone was resolute, and there was no room for doubt or refutation. Chu Ruoyu squinted his eyes slightly, and said indifferently, young friend, it is better not to be too ruthless. Leave some leeway for everything, and it is beneficial for you and for us. The weapon casket buzzed again, and when the flowing light shuttled back and forth, the expression of Chu and he, who was trapped in the array, immediately changed. Again? That familiar pressure came again, and he looked on helplessly as the flowing light pierced another hole in his body. Chu Ruoyu was furious, and he took a step forward and shouted, although the 5 great families of the Silver Snake Valley have been staying in the arcane realm for a long time, we do not lack the courage to perish together with the enemy. Young friend, although you control the life and death of the 5 of them, do you not care about the life of your companions? Buzz, the imperial equipment flew out 3 times, and in the blink of an eye it flew back. Chu and he, who had 3 holes in his body, looked at Chu Ruoyu with a pale face, and his eyes were full of pleading. Although the young man had avoided his vital parts, this kind of injury was really unbearable for him, and if this went on, he was afraid that he would really die. He wailed in his heart, family head, oh family head, don't be so long-winded with him. Every word I say will add another hole to my body. I really can't take it anymore. If you want to kill, then go ahead. Lu Yi looked at Chu Ruoyu calmly, and there was even a hint of provocation in his eyes. Do you want to try? Even though Chu Ruoyu thought that he understood people well, he could not understand what Lu Yi was thinking at this moment. Originally, he thought that Lu Yi was a righteous person, and for his companions who had fallen, he did not hesitate to take the risk alone, entered the residences of the 5 great families, and even left some clues leading them here to confront him. But now it seemed that this young man seemed like, did he not care too much about the life and death of his companions? Then what was he doing all this for? Indeed, in this chaotic world, people's hearts were unpredictable and hard to predict. Valley Head, brother and his body is priceless, and we can't afford to lose him. This person is also vicious and merciless. Why don't we go along with his wishes first? Then we make plans? Someone came to Chu Ruoyu's side and softly advised. The main thing was that Chu and he was not the only one who was captured, and there were people from the 5 great families. Since that young man dared to make a move on Chu and he naturally dared to make a move on the others. At this moment, the 5 great families could be said to be bound together for good or ill, and they could not let Chu Ruoyu really enrage the other party. Otherwise, if someone died, there would really be no way to clean up the matter. Of course, more importantly, Chu Ruoyu needed a way out at this moment. 7017K. Chapter 804. Bring him over. Chu Ruoyu gave the order. The people from the great clans all let out a long sigh of relief. Someone immediately volunteered and quickly left. The small courtyard fell into silence once again. Although the experts of the 5 great clans had surrounded the place, Wei Wuguang and the others were trapped in the formation. Their lives were in Lu Ye's hands, so they did not dare to have any rash action. However, it could be seen from the constant exchange of gazes that their hearts were far from as calm as they appeared on the surface. They must have some thoughts. The 5 great clans had controlled the Silver Snake Valley secret realm for nearly 1,000 years. Here they were the heavens, the rulers. No one dared to resist him. When had they ever been so disrespected? Not to mention that the experts of the clan had been captured, and their lives were out of their control. Even if Lu Yi had held back, he had already touched the bottom line of the 5 great clans. However, his previous ruthless style had undoubtedly made the 5 great clans fearful. Therefore, at this moment no one took the initiative to say anything. They only angered him and made their clansmen suffer. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, it was only the time it took to drink a cup of tea before Ing Wui, who was tied up in a wide range of purchasing tools, was brought over. It could be seen that Ing Wui had suffered a bit. At this moment, not only was his clothes naked, his face was also bruised and swollen. It was no wonder that the Silver Snake Valley wanted to inquire about him and Lu Yi, so they naturally had to use some methods. However, the cultivators from the 9 regions were all tough, especially the core disciples of the top sects like Ing Wuji. Even if he was against Lu Ye's camp, how could he betray him at this time? Therefore, even though he had been humiliated, the Silver Snake Valley had not been able to find out any useful information from Ing Wuji. After being brought to the small courtyard and seeing Lu Yi sitting there, Ing Wuji's eyes couldn't help but moisten. He was truly moved. He had thought that he had fallen this time, and he had not expected Lu Yi to come and save him. After all, everyone was enemies in the 9 regions. Yes, he had even tried to kill Lu Yi before. Logically speaking, Lu Yi could completely abandon him. The reason he was captured had nothing to do with Lu Yi. It was entirely because of his own incompetence and lack of vigilance. Who would have thought that Lu Yi would actually save him? Moreover, looking at the huge formation in the small courtyard, Lu Yi was actually fighting against him by himself. The secret compilation of the Book of Resistance Q matter? Lu Yi raised his head and looked at him. I won't die. Ing Wuji grinned at him. When Lu Yi raised his head and raised his hand, the spiritual power of the formation that trapped Wei Wuguang and the others surged. Long Yu, who was injured, cried out in alarm. It was directly thrown out by an invisible force. A Long family cultivator with sharp eyes and nimble hands leaped up and caught Long Yu. After a brief examination, he discovered that although Long Yu's injuries were serious, he was still injured. Now that his life was no longer in danger, he nodded slightly at the Long family's patriarch. Let him go. Lu Yi looked at Chu Ruoyu. Chu Ruoyu frowned. Your Excellency, do you mean to exchange one life for another? A life for a life, fair and just. Lu Yi stood up slowly. He stood with his hands on his saber. As he stood up, the hearts of many experts in the small courtyard couldn't help but tighten. When he was sitting there, no one felt anything, but when he stood up, many cultivators felt something. He felt an immense pressure bearing down on him, as if the one standing in front of him was not a human, but an ancient ferocious beast that was about to devour him. Their hearts trembled. Or you can also choose not to exchange. As Lu Yi spoke, the weapon box at his waist buzzed, and 3 imperial equipment streaks of light shot out. landing squarely on Feng Wuji and the other's super gate T. His feet were flat, but no matter how hard he tried, Chu Xiu would still reach him. Murderous intent. No one dared to doubt him. At this moment, if Chu Ruoyu dared to say the word tenant, someone in this small courtyard would die on the spot. Calm down, little friend. Wait a moment. The group of people cried out in alarm, afraid that Lu Yi would really kill those people. Chu Ruoyu stared coldly at Lu Yi, his heart full of frustration. He was also an experienced person, but ever since he came to this small courtyard, when he saw this youth, he had always been led by the nose by the other party. How could he be willing to accept this? But now, even if they surrounded this place so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through, their situation was inferior. The youth in front of him had a ruthless and decisive style, which could be seen from how he left 3 holes in Chu on his body when he was slightly displeased. Seeing this, if the experts of the great families died here because of him, then he, as the master of the secret realm, would probably have to abdicate in advance. Let him go. Chu Ruoyu waved his hand. As the spiritual power surged, the spirit artifact that bounding Wuji was taken away. Yin Wudi went to Shuiyang's side and turned his head. He felt a great sense of security, and his words were also in the area. He was angry. Where are my things? Although he had his own storage space like Lu Yi, and didn't have many things in his storage space, he couldn't just let it be for free. Others took advantage of him. Give it back to him. Chu Ruoyu ordered again. Someone untied a storage bag from his waist and threw it to Ing Wuji. He checked it for a moment and then raised his head. There's also a sound transmission stone. Chu Ruoyu raised his hand and threw Ing Wuji's sound transmission stone back. That's more like it. Ing Wuji snorted coldly. Dong. A sound rang out. Lu Yi held the Panshan saber in front of him and folded his hands on the hilt. Now we can talk about other things. Chu Ruoyu looked vigilant. What do you want to talk about? The method to contact the other 2 secret realms, or find the entrance to those 2 secret realms. Also, we have to leave this place. Inside. As soon as he said this, not only did Chu Ruoyu frown, even the other cultivators in the small courtyard were puzzled. The 2 of you aren't from those 2 secret realms? Someone asked. Their new first Huang Zhe, Mad Leaf, and Ing Wuji came out of the Duo Susi family's 4th secret, Ru Zue Lu Jiesher Palace's secret realm, and Zhang Shilai was very impressive. It seemed like that wasn't the case. If they came from one of these 2 secret realms, why would they come to the Silver Snake Valley to inquire about those things? But if this person didn't come from those 2 secret realms, where could he come from? How could a stronghold outside nurture such a person? This was simply inconceivable. Chu Ruoyu also found it hard to believe, but if the other party was deliberately mystifying, it was obviously unnecessary. Many thoughts flashed through his mind, and he said in a deep voice, "Little friend, you're making things difficult. The 3 great secret realms of the human race are all extremely hidden. In the void, even if the people in this secret realm leave, they have to arrive at a specific place at a specific time, and use spiritual objects to receive them. Only by guiding them can they open the door. How could my Silver Snake Valley have a way to find the other 2 secret realm portals? If there really was one, then those 2 wouldn't be at ease. What's the way to contact them?" Chu Ruoyu said. It has always been the 3 great secret realms emissaries who meet outside that there will be some communication. There's no way to contact them, so we can't help you with what you're asking for. He didn't tell the truth, because the 3 great secret ants had an agreement in the early years that they would each send people to a certain secret realm within a year. Thus, they would exchange some information with each other. Or they would talk about some important matters. Of course, he didn't need to tell Lu Yan about this kind of thing. Moreover, it was useless to say it because there was still a long time before the next 3 great secret realms. There was still more than a year before the 3 secret realms met. However, the Silver Snake Valley did not take the initiative to contact the other 2 secret realms, nor did they find the 2 secret realm portals. Ability. Those 2 didn't have it either. Lu Yan listened quietly and observed his expression. He felt that this old man didn't seem to be lying. He secretly had a headache. He had only walked through 1 secret realm, and there were already so many twists and turns. How could he find the other 2? As for sending the two of you away, there's no problem. Chu Ruoyu paused. However, this old man also has a request. Speak. Other than letting those 4 people go, this old man wants the refining method of the sound transmission stone. From all the previous events, it could be concluded that the young man with the saber was able to negotiate the legendary area stone. As for the spirit pill, Chu Ruoyu didn't have the chance to give it to him. The refining method of the spirit pill was too interesting. It depended on the refining level of the alchemist and the supply of raw materials, so even if he got it, it might not be of much use. Moreover, the 2 people in front of him might not know the refining method of the spirit pill. Wuji laughed. Old man, it's not a good thing to be too greedy. It's just a small request. I hope you can fulfill it. Chu Ruoyu ignored him and only looked at Lu Yi. Sure. What Chu Ruoyu and the cultivators of the 5 great clans didn't expect was that Lu Yi agreed so readily. After agreeing, he immediately took out a blank jade slip, activated his spiritual power, and imprinted the refining method of the sound transmission stone on it. Type. After that, he tossed the jade slip to Chu Ruoyu. So simple? Chu Ruoyu was stunned for a moment, almost suspecting that Lu Yi was up to something. He quickly immersed his mind and checked the jade slip. He looked at the contents but couldn't find anything special. He didn't know much about refining weapons, so he passed the jade slip to a cultivator beside him to let him check if it was real or fake. That cultivator checked for a while before saying uncertainly, "There should be no problem." There was no problem. Lu Yi didn't hide the refining method of the sound transmission stone. As for whether the Silver Snake Valley could refine it, it wasn't something he needed to worry about. This thing wasn't difficult to refine, but it wasn't easy either. Lu Yi could easily refine it because he had the foundation of a spirit tattooist. Moreover, this wasn't something valuable, so Lu Yi didn't want to be entangled with them. It was more important to leave this place early and find the other 2 secret realms. The 4 of them. Chu Ruoyu looked at Wei Wuguang and the others who were trapped in the small courtyard. Lu Yi raised his hand, and the array flags were retrieved. In the small courtyard, the array was lifted instantly. Chu Ruoyu's eyes twitched, and he looked at Lu Yi meaningfully. It seems that you have absolute confidence in your own strength. Confidence. To hand over the refining method of the sound transmission stone so easily, and to let them go so easily, it showed that the young man in front of him had nothing to fear. This made Chu Ruoyu a little uncomfortable. All kinds of dangerous thoughts surged in his heart, but he couldn't make up his mind. First, the 2 of us only want to discuss this place. Of course you can try to make us stay. Shang Ji looked calmly. He was Ruoyu. The 2 of them looked at each other. One was full of vitality, the other was as deep as the abyss. The atmosphere in the small courtyard immediately became hostile. After a long while, Chu Ruoyu let out a long breath. Heroes come from the youth. Chapter 805. Wuji almost thought that the 2 sides were going to fight. After all, Lu Yi had released the hostages in his hands, and the Silver Snake Valley was no longer restrained. Instead, the 2 of them were surrounded by many experts of the 5 great clans, and the situation was bad. Of course, he did not doubt that Lu Yi had the ability to kill his way out of here, but he himself might not have the ability. He had already made up his mind that if they really fought, he must follow Lu Yi closely and must not fall into the hands of the 5 great clans again. Previously, he was careless and was captured. That was because he was stupid. If he was captured again, he would not have the face to ask Lu Yi to save him again. But who would have thought that after looking at each other for a long time, after a long sigh from Chu Ruoyu, the expected battle did not happen. That long sigh was not only Chu Ruoyu's praise for Lu Yi, but also his concession. He clearly realized one thing. If they really fought, the cultivators gathered around the small courtyard would probably suffer heavy casualties. So under Chu Ruoyu's command, a group of experts of the 5 great clans surrounded Lu Yi and Wuji and walked towards the direction of the door. It was both an escort and surveillance. After an hour, they had arrived at the location of the door of the secret realm. The cultivators on guard duty here obviously didn't know what was going on. When they saw a large group of people flying over from afar, they were all startled. When they went forward to ask for the reason, they understood that they were actually sending the two intruders out of the secret realm. For a moment they were indignant. For so many years, other than the Silver Snake Valley who had brought in some humans from outside, no one had ever been tempted like this before. For so many years, no one had ever intruded into the Silver Snake Valley other than the human clan that he had brought in from the outside. No matter what the intruder's background was or what his purpose was, this was a blatant invasion and a slap to the face of the Silver Snake Valley. So it was hard for them to imagine why the higher-ups would reach such an agreement with these two intruders. But since this matter had been decided, they could not interfere and could only follow orders. The so-called door was not a substantial door, but the space here was relatively weak, and there were means left by the great cultivators of the Silver Snake Valley in the early years that could be slightly controlled. In this way, the cultivators of the Silver Snake Valley had to pass through here if they wanted to enter the secret realm. I'll let you know. It's not easy to open the door, and it might take some time. I'll have to ask the two of you to wait. After landing, Chu Ryu said to Lu Yi and ordered the cultivators on duty, "Open the door." "Yes." The group of cultivators on duty accepted the order and immediately got busy. Lu Yi stood there quietly. Unlike Ying Wuji, who was constantly on guard, Lu Ye's posture was relaxed, as if he didn't care about the gazes that were staring at him from all directions. But the more he acted like this, the more the cultivators from the 5 great clans didn't dare to act rashly. They didn't know how strong Lu Yi was, but they knew how strong Long Yu and Wei Wuguang were. This kind of person who could casually defeat Long Yu and Wei Wuguang and even easily capture them, how could his strength be weak? No one doubted that if someone really dared to provoke him, that seemingly harmless figure would definitely take action. As time passed, Lu Yi frowned. Too slow. It had been an hour since they arrived here, but the door still hadn't opened. From what he could see, the cultivators on duty who were in charge of opening the door were deliberately delaying it. He really didn't know how to open the door, but he could tell whether they were doing their best or not. Chu Ruoyu said, "The opening of the door has always been like this. Little friend, please. If the door doesn't open in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the two of us won't leave." Lu Yi turned his head and looked at Chu Ruoyu coldly. Such an obvious threat immediately caused the cultivators around to burst into an uproar. Even Chu Ruoyu narrowed his eyes. "It's good that you won't leave, it's good that you won't leave." Ing Wuji grinned, looking eager to try. Ever since he had arrived at the secret territory, he had been captured and imprisoned. After that, he had been tortured. His heart was filled with anger and he had nowhere to vent it. If Lu Yi really wanted to start a massacre here, then it would be a great opportunity for him to exact his revenge. He would also let the 5 great families know why he, Ing Wuji, had been able to obtain the 16th place in the Cloud River contest. Amidst the commotion, Chu Ruoyu raised his hand slightly, and the surrounding noise immediately quieted down. He avoided Lu Ye's gaze and looked at a cultivator on duty next to the door. "And Kong, if you don't care about the cost, can you open the door in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn?" Chu and Kong pondered for a moment, then raised his head and said, "Yes." "Then, open it in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn." "Yes." Chu and Kong accepted the order and shouted, "Move faster." "Then, open it in the time it takes for an incense stick to burn." "Yes." Chu and Kong accepted the order and shouted, "Move faster." Only then did Churu look at Lu Yi. "Little friend, can you do as you wish?" "I hope so." The cultivators on duty indeed moved faster. Specks of golden light began to spread, outlining the shape of the door in the void. Lu Yi divided his attention, observing the door while remaining vigilant of all movements. Since things had reached this point, he didn't want to make any mistakes. Although he had reached a deal with the Silver Snake Valley, he could faintly feel that the Silver Snake Valley was up to something. It was definitely not just because they were afraid of him and wanted to send him away quickly. Looking at the door and thinking about everything that had happened before, he vaguely had some guesses in his heart. "How long will it take to pass through?" Lu Yi asked. Chu Ruoyu said, "When the door is stable, you can pass through. Of course, if little friend wants to leave now, that's fine too. However, under the situation where the door is unstable, there might be some unexpected situations. For example, that's hard to say. In the end, This door is a method left behind by the great cultivators from 1,000 years ago. Now we can only activate it slightly and don't know the reason. Chu Ruoyu reached out and stroked his beard, keeping it a secret. Lu Yi nodded slightly and suddenly turned to look at Chu Ruoyu. What's outside the door? Chu Ruoyu's stroking of his beard paused imperceptibly and followed up. Outside the door is naturally the Wuxia continent. The corners of Lu Ye's mouth curled up slightly and a sneer appeared. He took a step forward and walked towards the door. Ing Wuji had been paying attention to his movements and hurriedly followed after seeing this. The corners of Lu Ye's mouth curled up slightly and a sneer appeared. He took a step forward and walked towards the door. Ing Wuji had been paying attention to his movements and hurriedly followed after him. Chu Ruoyu's expression changed. Little friend, the door is not stable yet. There are many risks involved in passing through at this time. Please reconsider. Lu Yi pretended not to hear him and his figure flickered as he stepped into the door. The golden door trembled slightly and showed signs of collapsing, but it quickly stabilized. Following closely behind Lu Yi, Ing Wuji also stepped into the door, and the two of them completely disappeared from everyone's sight. Chu Ruoyu's face sank and he turned to Chu Ankong and asked, "Where is the door?" The others also paid close attention. The reason why they agreed to send Lu Yi and Ing Wuji away was because Chu Ruoyu and the other leaders of the 5 great families had their own plans. On one hand, they were afraid of Lu Ye's strength and did not want him to continue staying in Silver Snake Valley Sealed Realm. How could they allow others to sleep next to their bed? If such a person stayed in Silver Snake Valley, no one would be safe, so it was better to deal with him as soon as possible. However, although these people's strength wasn't too bad, they had long lost the courage and boldness to fight to the death, so whether it was Chu Ruoyu or the other leaders, none of them were willing to engage Lu Yi and Ing Wuji in a direct confrontation. If they wanted to deal with these two intruders but did not want to have any direct conflict with them, then there was only one way: borrowing the hands of a corpse race powerhouse. The sealed realm drifted in the void and did not reveal itself. Although the trajectory of its movement was not fixed, there were still traces to follow. Each of the 5 great families had a cultivator who was responsible for calculating the location of the door. The person in charge of this was Chu Ankong. Opening the door would not be easy and would take a lot of time, but it was just a cover for Chu Ruoyu. Opening the door of the sealed realm did require some resources, but as long as it was done properly, the door could be opened in a dozen breaths. If it really took a long time, how could the envoys return safely? Therefore, when Chu Ruoyu said these words, Chu Ankong immediately understood his intentions. It was clear that he wanted to open the door at a specific location and send the 2 intruders out. After that, things were simple. Chu Ankong secretly calculated the location of the door, chose a suitable place, and kept delaying the time. But the result was not as he wished. The boy with the saber obviously noticed something. He not only urged Chu Ankong, but also moved before the door was completely stable, so the position of the door was not very ideal. Chu Ankong said, "It should be near Lin Sun's tomb." After thousands of years of accumulation, the Silver Snake Valley knew which places on the Wuxia continent could safely open the door, and where there were hidden dangers, but at least they knew most of them. Otherwise, the sealed realm could not open the door in a safe place every time to avoid some dangerous places. Lin Sun's tomb. A group of people heard this and took a breath of cold air. The corpse race was also transformed by the human clan. Lin Sun seemed to be a strong man on the Wuxia continent hundreds of years ago. Master Lin Sun. A group of people heard this and took a breath of cold air. The corpse race was also transformed by the human clan. Lin Sun seemed to be a strong man on the Wuxia continent hundreds of years ago. After turning into a corpse race, not only did his combat strength not decrease, but he also gained many abilities of the corpse race, which was extremely difficult to deal with. There were many strong men in the corpse race. The most powerful one was naturally the Golden Corpse King, and there were several corpse commanders under him who were also very powerful. Lin Sun's strength might not be as good as that of the corpse commanders, but it was not too far away. He had tens of thousands of corpses under his command, and they usually lay in the tomb to raise their corpses. Lin Sun's tomb was also listed as a forbidden place by the Silver Snake Valley. Within 30,000 miles, no one dared to open the door easily, for fear that Lin Sun would notice and come to find them. Although the opening of the door does not make a big noise, as long as it is not too far away, it should be able to alarm Lin Sun. Chu Wankong said with a look of pity, if we can delay it for half a day, we can directly open the door in the territory of the Silver Corps commander, and the two of them will definitely die. Chu Ruoyu shook his head slowly. This is also the best result. If we really open the door in the territory of the Silver Corps commander, it may not be a good thing for us. Let's use the heavenly mirror and see how those two brats who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth will die. He clicked to download the best book-chasing app. Many readers use this to read books aloud. Chapter 806. The Divine Mirror was also a treasure left behind by ancient cultivators. The cultivators in the secret realm could monitor the situation outside with this treasure. Under normal circumstances, before the Silver Snake Valley opened the door, they would activate the Divine Mirror to check the outside world. After confirming that there were no Corpse Clan ambushes outside, they would open the door. This time, in order to avoid giving themselves away, they did not activate it in advance. Lu Yi and Ing Wuji, the two outsiders, naturally knew nothing about this. As soon as Chu Ruoyu finished speaking, the cultivators on duty worked together to take out a treasure that looked like a bronze mirror and poured their spiritual power into it. Very quickly, ripples appeared in the copper mirror. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples to appear. As the ripples slowly stabilized, a scene of fishing from a high vantage point appeared in the bronze mirror. The group of people looked over and two figures immediately appeared in their field of vision. It was Lu Yi and Ing Wuji. Dozens of miles away from the two of them, there was a huge yellow cloud that rolled and wriggled, sweeping over like a sandstorm. Even through the heaven-reflecting mirror, the Silver Snake Valley cultivators could feel the monstrous ferocious power in the yellow cloud. Lin Sun was indeed alarmed. Someone was delighted. Now these two can't live even if they want to. Valley Master's plan is unparalleled. He took care of them without bloodshed. How dare they break into the secret realm of our Silver Snake Valley? They really don't know what's good for them. Seduso CC first. It's a pity. These two people are quite strong. If they could be used by our Silver Snake Valley. The person who spoke slowly shook his head. Forget about the captured one. The strength of the youth with the sword was not quite good, but a little too strong. Even if such a person was used by them, they would not dare to rest assured. On the other side, Lu Yi and Ing Wuji turned their heads to look in the direction of the yellow cloud. Ing Wuji's expression immediately changed. This movement, it's a zombie horde. When he came to the Wushuang continent, he suffered a great loss at the hands of the zombie horde, so he had some psychological trauma. Especially at this moment, he was not in a good state. Looking at the scale of the zombie horde, it seemed to be more magnificent than the ones he had encountered before. It could be seen that this zombie horde was tyrannical. Why aren't you running? Ing Wuji glanced at Lu Yi, only to see Lu Yi looking up at the sky, staring at a certain spot in the sky. Puzzled, he asked, "What are you looking at?" Lu Yi didn't say anything. The strength of his mind made him feel as if he was being spied on. Although he wasn't sure what was going on, he could roughly guess. Inside the secret realm, the people from the Silver Snake Valley were all shocked when they met the deep gaze. He sensed it. Some people found it hard to believe that he could sense the existence of the heavenly reflection mirror. What kind of trick was this, young man? Chu Ruoyu's expression also became serious. He had overestimated Lu Ye's strength as much as possible before, but now it seemed that he had still underestimated him. To be able to perceive the divine mirror meant that his mental strength was beyond his imagination. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, the mystic realm didn't have any major conflicts with him, and fulfilled his requests as much as possible. He was secretly complacent. No matter how strong he was, now that he had alarmed Lin Sun, he was afraid that he would die without a burial place. "Can you run?" Outside the mystic realm, Lu Yi asked faintly after hearing Ing Wuji's urging. "I have to run even if I can't. How about you carry me?" Ing Wuji looked helpless. He had suffered a lot of torture in the dungeon of Wuyuan City. Although his vitality wasn't greatly damaged, his strength was also damaged. If he wanted to escape, he might not be able to escape. Lu Yi didn't speak. Under Ing Wuji's surprised gaze, he took a step forward. The next moment, the spiritual energy around his body surged and the fiery red spiritual energy spread all over the void. Ing Wuji couldn't help narrowing his eyes and couldn't look directly at it. The rolling and surging spiritual energy seemed to have a mind of its own. It transformed into a clearly visible yin and yang that quickly intertwined and spread out in all directions. Ing Wuji, who was wondering what Lu Yi was doing, suddenly felt his heart skip a beat. A great shock spread all over his body, and he suddenly had the illusion that a fierce beast was about to break out of the cage. The dazzling light slowly converged, and the scene in his field of vision was imprinted in his eyes. This is... Ing Wuji's eyelids suddenly contracted. Looking at it, the spiritual energy surging out of Lu Ye's body was rapidly spreading out, with him as the center, outlining the outline of a huge divine bird. The divine bird was not fully formed, only a rough outline, but its monstrous power made people's hearts tremble. It was hard to imagine what kind of power it would have if it was fully formed. Looking at the divine bird, its body was huge and smooth, with long feathers behind its tail. The unpredictable yin and yang quickly took shape in the body of the divine sense, turning into flesh and blood that filled the body. The spiritual energy surged more and more fiercely. Roar! 30 miles away, the zombie horde that had followed the trail rushed over. As if it had also sensed something, the rolling yellow clouds suddenly sped up at this moment. Within the yellow clouds, the figures of the rotting corpses floated and sank. Uncertain. What is this? In the Silver Snake Valley Secret Realm, a group of cultivators from the 5 great families who were waiting to watch a good show were also shocked. Looking at the fledgling divine bird that suddenly appeared, their eyes were filled with disbelief. Although they were separated by a layer of heaven and earth and couldn't feel the power of the divine bird, just by looking at its size, they could tell that it was definitely a spell that could destroy the heavens and earth. That saber-wielding youth still had such a shocking method? For a time, many people were dripping with cold sweat. Copious spiritual energy flowed out of his body, turning into yin and yang that connected and merged, turning into flesh and blood that filled the divine bird's body. And then the feathers on the divine bird's body began to become vivid. Towering between heaven and earth, endless power filled the air. And the divine bird seemed to have been given life, turning into a living creature. Ing Wuji had already retreated more than 10 miles. Looking at the fiery red divine bird, muttering "Fire Phoenix," he suddenly remembered something. As a cultivator from the War Province, he had also secretly inquired about Lu Yi, and it seemed to have mentioned this spell. In the hunting ground, his cultivation was low, and he was chased by countless Devil Ridge cultivators. In the end, he had no way to escape and was forced to use a golden body token to protect himself. At that time, he seemed to have activated this spell, and in the desperate situation, he killed many Devil Ridge cultivators and became famous in the Cloud River battlefield. But after that, people analyzed that it was very likely the power of a rare treasure. Otherwise, with Lu Yi's cultivation at that time, how could he activate such a powerful spell? And since the hunting ground, it seemed that no one had seen Lu Yi activate this spell again. Until now, when the Fire Phoenix reappeared in the world, its image was clearly reflected in Ing Wuji's vision. How could he not understand that this was not the power of a rare treasure at all, but the ability of Lu Yi himself? But although this spell was strong, it seemed that the time it took to accumulate power was too long. In a real life and death battle with a strong enemy, this spell would not have time to activate. It was also at this moment that Lu Yi had enough time and space to use this technique before the enemy arrived. Wasn't this guy a weapon cultivator? How in the world did he master such a complex and exquisite technique? Ing Wuji stared at the intricate patterns that outlined the spell. He knew that even if he spent his entire life, he would never be able to touch the surface of this spell. Moreover, even orthodox Dharma cultivators were only at the 8th level of Cloud River. Even a Kai Realm cultivator would not be able to use such a technique. Even a true Lake Realm cultivator would not necessarily have such a huge heart. Spirit and exquisite control of spiritual power. Lu Yi, what a monster! At this moment, even though he was from a different camp, Ing Wuji's heart was stirred. This was the cultivator of the 9 regions. Compared to those dogs in the Silver Snake Valley, How could they be just a little bit stronger? Roar! 10 miles away, a deafening roar came from the rolling horde of zombies. However, compared to the previous roar, the roar this time was obviously more fearful and anxious. Obviously, the zombies controlling the horde of zombies had also realized that something was wrong. If they did not kill the person who cast the spell before it was fully formed, they would definitely be the unlucky one. However, it was already too late. When the yellow cloud that covered the sky with countless zombies approached 5 miles in front of Wuxia, the fire phoenix that was originally condensed in midair suddenly extended its wings and flapped them lightly. At this moment it seemed to have completely come alive. Screech! The clear and melodious cry of the bird resounded through the sky, and the huge fire, the red figure, flapped its wings and looked over. Wherever it passed, the scorching heat wave caused the void to distort. The long collar feathers behind its tail dragged out specks of red light, connecting together to form a fiery red belt of light. It was magnificent and magnificent. However, under this incomparably beautiful figure, there was a monstrous killing intent hidden. The huge yellow cloud that was rushing over suddenly stopped. Under the shocked gazes of Wuxia and the many Silver Snake Valley cultivators, it turned around and ran. It escaped. Chu Ruoyu staggered. He basically could not believe his eyes. That was Lin Suan, one of the most powerful cultivators below corpse commanders. He was a vicious existence that made the 3 great secret realms of the human race avoid him. Someone so powerful actually fled from the divine bird without putting up a fight? However, how could he escape? The wings of the fire phoenix flapped steadily, but it was extremely fast. Its huge figure turned into a scorching streak of fire. In just a few seconds it had caught up to the fleeing horde of zombies. The fiery red figure crashed into the yellow cloud. The collision of yellow and red basically did not cause any ripples at all. It had only been a single clash, and the outcome had been decided. The yellow cloud was burned to nothingness, including the zombies hidden within. They were all reduced to ashes. After the fiery red light receded slightly, it expanded loudly and enveloped a large area of space. It seemed like a rain of zombies had fallen between the heavens and the earth. Only after the blinding red light had dispersed did the scene in the air appear before their eyes. The fire phoenix was gone, and the yellow cloud that swept through the heavens and the earth was gone. There were only 2 figures standing in the air. A blade-wielding youth had already drawn his blade from its scabbard. A charred corpse that was so charred that its original appearance could not be made out was placed across the corpse's neck. The blade had already sunk 3 inches into the flesh. The charred corpse raised its huge hand and gripped the blade of Mount Wu's blade, making a final struggle. The world seemed to fall silent in that moment. The blade flashed past, and the corpse was decapitated. Chapter 807. Lu Yi sheathed his saber. He raised his eyes and looked somewhere in the sky. Quickly put away the divine mirror. Chu Ruoyu was flustered and hurriedly ordered. The last slash didn't seem to be aimed at Lin Suan but at his neck. Even if they were separated by heaven and earth, he still had the illusion of a cold-necked dolphin. Beside Chu Ruoyu, the practitioners of the 5 families were all silent. Originally they wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. Who would have thought that they would see such a terrible scene? A powerful undead like Lin Suan, together with the undead under his command, was burned to a crisp by the Tao of Man. Even Lin Sun himself was killed. Such strength, such ferocity. Everyone was glad that the young man with the saber didn't use such a technique in Wuhan City. Otherwise, the whole city would be in purgatory. Now it seemed that losing their spirit was also good. If they hadn't lost their spirit for a long time, they might have had a fight with the 2 intruders. Although they had offended the 2, as long as they couldn't find the door to the secret realm, they couldn't come in again. Almost everyone couldn't help but have the same thought. They didn't want to meet the young man with the saber again in this life. In midair, Lu Yi withdrew his gaze and quietly stuffed a large number of spirit pills into his mouth. Taking advantage of the moment he turned around, he swept his gaze in a certain direction and rushed towards Wuji. In that direction 2 figures were hiding. Hong Xian's shock couldn't be calmed down for a long time. The reason why the 2 of them were here was not by chance, but because they had been squatting here and monitoring Lin Sun for some days. They didn't expect to see such a shocking scene because of a competition. "It's all right," one of them said softly. "Yes." The other quickly raised his hand to his mouth. "Be quiet." He felt that the young man with the saber glanced at them when he turned around. How could he dare to be careless in the face of such a fierce person? Seeing Lu Ye's figure going away, he quickly got up. Follow him. In any case, they had to figure out the origin of that person. If they could help him, it would be best. He had killed a powerful zombie like Lin Sun and his subordinates by himself. How could such a talent be buried? Such strength and such a terrifying technique were simply unheard of. They just didn't know which one of the other two secret realms he came from. After meeting up with Ing Wuji, Lu Yi led him all the way up. At the same time, he silently activated the Taoist meal to quickly refine the effect of the spiritual pills in his stomach and enhance his strength. Not long ago, he had to do a long preparation to activate the Fire Phoenix spiritual tattoo, and even had to use the spiritual energy in his spiritual storage. But now, with his own spiritual energy reserves, he was barely able to draw the spiritual Taoist spirit tattoo. The time. Without a doubt, this was the benefit brought about by the rapid increase in cultivation. However, the Fire Phoenix spirit was strong. However, if it was used in a life and death battle with a strong opponent, it was still not very suitable. Although Gao Shi's time was greatly reduced, in front of a strong opponent who was on par with him, it was impossible for him to have the opportunity to accumulate power. That was why the situation was like before. The reckless enemies were attacking him from afar, giving him enough time to prepare. But then again, he had several trump cards up his sleeves. They all needed to be stored up. This blood and his transformation secret technique. It was not easy to obtain a powerful armor like the Dragon Emperor from the Soaring Dragon realm, but it was still damaged and could not be used. He wondered how his honored master was doing now. His current cultivation was at the 8th Order Cloud River realm, and he was not far from the open Cloud River battlefield. Once he left the open Cloud River battlefield, the environment would not be so safe. He might face a life or death crisis at any time. I need to have some life-saving means. Thinking so in his heart, Ing Wuji's words rang in his ears. Lu Yi, I Ing Wuji will remember your life-saving grace. I will repay you in the future. This was the second time Sui Yi had saved his life. The first time was when he was chased by a group of zombies in the Peerless Continent. Lu Ye's void puppet had appeared and saved him. This time Lu Yi had rescued him from the hands of the 5 great clans in one piece. It would be a lie to say that he was not grateful, but after all, they were on opposite sides. There were many things that were not up to Ing Wuji. Just now, he had been immersed in the shock brought by the Fire Phoenix spirit tomb. When one was unable to recover until now, sincerely expressing his thanks, his face was filled with gratitude. It was just a matter of convenience. Lu Ye's words made Ing Wuji feel as if he had swallowed a fly. Even if it was true, there was no need to say it so bluntly. Do I not care about face? But thinking about it carefully, perhaps Lu Yi had saved him in passing. If he wanted to open the Silver Snake Valley sealed world, he would have to clash with the 5 great families. Taking the hostages of the 5 great families, he would exchange them for Baijping. Ing Wuji's heart sank as he realized that in front of Lu Yi, Baiji, the 16th Order of the Cloud River realm, was not. Just as he was thinking, Lu Ye's figure suddenly fell down and a polar ray appeared in his hand, shooting it out in all directions. Setting up a spirit array at this time, Ing Wuji suddenly understood. It seemed that the technique just now must have consumed a lot of Lu Ye's strength, so he urgently needed to restore himself. Soon the spirit array covering a large area was set up, causing Ing Wuji to gasp in amazement. Such speed in setting up a spirit array was something he could never hope to achieve. Hide yourself, Lu Yeha ordered. Ing Wuji did not ask why and immediately activated his concealment technique. Immediately afterwards, Lu Yi also disappeared from his field of vision. Behind Emozhangcha was Ing Wuji, who was hiding in the dark. Suddenly, Ing Wuji noticed something strange. It seemed that someone had penetrated the spirit array and, like him and Lu Yi, had concealed themselves and acted quietly. Ingwuji suddenly realized that Lu Yi had not arranged a spirit array here to restore himself, but rather because he had noticed that someone was secretly following them. Was it someone from Silver Snake Valley? Or was it someone else? Just as Ingwuji was feeling suspicious, suddenly, there was a cry of alarm and two figures appeared in his field of vision. At this moment, these two people seemed to be pressed down by a colorless mountain, their figures trembling and their spirit chi fluctuating, their expressions difficult. The two looked exactly the same, but one of them was wearing blue robes. The other was wearing gray robes, so they should be a pair of playboys. The aura fluctuations coming from each of them were only at the Cloud River Realm 8th Order, but their auras and spirit chi were able to blend together perfectly. The two 8th Order masters were like a pair, exuding an imposing aura. It was even stronger than an ordinary 9th Order. What kind of technique is this? Ingwuji stared at Yu Pei in shock. CNFA. The expression of the man in blue robes changed. Realizing that this was not a dream, he hurriedly shouted, "Two fellow Taoists. My brother Ro has no intention of harming you, please show mercy." He was shocked. Bai Ji and his brother had unknowingly fallen into the enemy's spirit array, and now their lives were in the hands of others. What surprised him even more was, how long had it been? The two of them had set up a spirit array here. Wasn't this too fast? The other man in gray robes also shouted, "You came to Bai Ji Dao Palace's secluded world, not some evil people." Bai Ji Dao Palace. A voice suddenly appeared. Lu Ye's figure appeared. This was really a coincidence. When Yijisi was in Silver Snake Valley, he had asked Chu Ruosi about the other Shang clan's secluded world, but Chu Ruosi had no idea. He was having a headache about how to find those two secluded worlds, but who knew that just as he stepped out of Silver Snake Valley, he would run into people from Wei Tong Palace. With a wave of his hand, the pressure that enveloped the twins suddenly disappeared. The two of them exhaled a breath of white air, and their hearts still had lingering fear. Thinking about how they had been fighting in the dark, they realized that they had actually fallen into the enemy's formation. It turned out that the feeling from before was not an illusion. The enemy had long discovered them and set up a formation here, just waiting for them to walk right into the trap. "You guys really came to Muzibo Dao Palace?" Shi Yi looked at the two people in front of him. "There's nothing to pretend about." The man in green robes clenched his fist. "Shuewei Dao Palace's Feng Yungan greets fellow Taoist." The man in gray robes also hugged GC. "Feng Yunwanli greets fellow Taoist." The names of these two brothers. Yi Chanye's eyes flashed. "Why are you following me?" Feng Yun Qianli smiled awkwardly. "It's not intentional. It's just that us two brothers were ordered to guard Lin Sun's secluded lion clan. Seeing that fellow Taoist is like a deity descending from the heavens, and taking care of Lin Sun and his subordinates, we wanted to make friends with you. If we've caused any misunderstanding, we'll apologize to you immediately." With that said, the two brothers fell to the ground. Although these words were not entirely true, it was true that they were secretly following Lu Yi and Ingwuji, but it was also true that they wanted to make friends with Lu Yi. "The two of you were ordered to guard Yunwei Dao Palace's natal food?" Lu Yi was deep in thought. Shui had gathered a lot of information in Five Elements City. Among them, there was naturally the way the three great secret realms did things. The three great secret realms of the human race. The Silver Snake Valley was the most cowardly, and never dared to take the initiative to have any conflicts with the corpse race. When they met the corpse race, they would avoid them as much as possible. They had long lost the courage and vigor to fight against the corpse race. But in contrast, the Purple Myrtle Dao Palace's style was tough. The corpse race of the two continents' corpse race was pure and clean. For 1,000 years, Shuewei Dao Palace had always wanted to get rid of the corpse race. For so many years, they had also been working hard to take the initiative to attack the South Atmosphere Factory race. They were also trying to persuade the other two great secret realms to join forces. They could only understand that the results were minimal. There was no need to talk about the Silver Snake Valley. They only wanted to guard their old territory. They even had to calculate the location of the door to open the P clan's territory. How could they join forces with the Purple Myrtle Dao Palace to take the initiative to attack? As for the Third Shumi Mountain secret realm, Aeyong had always been evasive. When they agreed to join forces with the Purple Myrtle Dao Palace, they did not refuse to drag it out. Their attitude was very national. However, the Jianhao Mountain had also spread the word that if the Silver Snake's name was Lang Yi, they would also join forces. Therefore, the current situation of the Wuxia continent was somewhat cowardly. Only the cultivation kings of the Purple Myrtle Dao Palace secret realm took the initiative to hunt the corpse race. Shumi Mountain was keeping an eye on the Snake Valley, and the Silver Snake's father adhered to the principle of being alone to the end. Chapter 808. Among the 3 secret realms of the Wuxia continent, Lu Yi had seen the Silver Snake Valley and knew he couldn't count on them. However, he had left a backup plan. When the critical moment came, it was impossible for the Silver Snake Valley to stay out of it. As for the other 2, Lu Yi was more inclined to cooperate with the Ziwei Taoist Palace. The practitioners in this secret realm were tough and had the demeanor of the 9 regions. If he could cooperate with them, the situation in the Wuxia continent could be changed. It could be said that the appearance of the brother Wind and Cloud was like someone giving him a pillow when he was sleepy. With many thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi asked, "What's the purpose of monitoring Lin Sun's tomb?" Wind and Cloud looked serious. Of course, to eradicate this evil. After hearing his explanation, Lu Yi finally understood that the Ziwei Daoist Palace had many people like the Feng and Yun brothers who were scattered outside. These people were either in charge of searching for powerful corpse race members or monitoring their movements. When the time was right, the Ziwei Daoist Palace would strike like a thunderbolt and exterminate all the corpse race members they had their eyes on. After so many years, the number of corpse clan who died in the hands of the Ziwei Taoist Palace was more than 100 or 1,000 times more than the other 2 secret realms. When they traveled outside, they would occasionally help some human strongholds. Many human strongholds had received their kindness. If the cultivators of the Pure Land organization were to touch them, they would not have a good ending. "May I ask which secret realm you 2 are from?" The brother Wind and Cloud were very curious. They could be sure that these 2 people were not from the Ziwei Taoist Palace. They had only been out of the secret realm for 2 months. It was impossible for the Ziwei Taoist Palace to suddenly have 2 powerful figures. But could the Silver Snake Valley and Mount Meru cultivate such talents? "We are not from the secret realm." The brother Wind and Cloud were stunned. "If you are not from the secret realm, are you from some stronghold?" Wind and Cloud looked incredible. If the 2 people in front of them were from the secret realm, they could accept it. Even if they were from the Silver Snake Valley, they were still cultivated by the secret realm. But coming from a stronghold was a bit unbelievable. The human strongholds in the Wuxia continent couldn't even guarantee their survival. How could such strong people be born? Kind of. Lu Yi repeated what he had said to Yuan Xiang, Drunk Mountain, and the others. The Wind and Cloud brothers exclaimed in disbelief. He was even more respectful towards him, ending Wu Ji's non-existent master. After all, the 2 of them were already so powerful. How powerful would the master who nurtured them be? So in this world there really was an unparalleled expert. But earlier I saw a door. 1,000 Miles of Wind Cloud was a little confused. The opening of the gate of Silver Snake Valley was easy to be observed. Otherwise, it would not alarm Lin Sun, who was dozens of miles away. It was because of this that the Wind Cloud brothers were almost certain that Lu Yi and Ying Wuji came from a mystic realm. "I made a trip to the Silver Snake Valley," Lu Yi explained. 1,000 Miles understood. "So that's how it is." Suddenly, he seemed to realize something and was filled with righteous indignation. Those cowards deliberately opened the door near Lin Sun's tomb. They are obviously up to no good and want to trap you too. Only then did Ying Wuji wake up from his dream. He thought that the previous encounter was just bad luck, but now it seemed that he had been tricked by the Silver Snake Valley. No wonder Lu Yi left in a hurry without waiting for the door to stabilize. He had already realized this. So he was the only one who was kept in the dark. "It seems that the 2 of you didn't get along well with the Silver Snake Valley." There was a small misunderstanding. 1,000 Miles of Wind Cloud felt Lu Ye's attitude and tried to figure out his thoughts. He made a decision and cupped his fists. "Fellow Taoists, if you don't mind, why don't you come to my Ziwei Daoist Palace? The way humans treat their guests is not all like the Silver Snake Valley. If the two of you can come to my Ziwei Daoist palace, I believe the palace master will be very happy. The two people in front of them were very powerful. After the death of their master, they should have intended to seek refuge in the mystic realm. In the end, they had some unhappiness with the Silver Snake Valley and were abandoned by them. They even intended to use Lin Sun to trap them. But the Silver Snake Valley obviously didn't expect the two to be so powerful. They failed to trap Lin Sun and even killed him. The Ziwei Daoist palace was undoubtedly very welcoming to such strong people. If they could rope in the two of them, it would be a happy event for the Ziwei Daoist palace. Junior brother, what do you think? Lu Yi didn't agree directly, but looked at Ing Wuji. What can I think? Ing Wuji cursed in his heart. If you want to agree, just agree directly. What's the point of pretending? But on the surface, he was very respectful. It's all up to senior brother. Lu Yi pondered for a while. Brother Wind and Cloud watched nervously. After a while, Lu Yi made a decision. If so, let's go? The Feng and Yun brothers laughed in unison. Feng Yun Qianli said, Fellow Taoist, don't worry. The Ziwei Daoist palace will not let you down. Although Feng Yun Qianli was rough, he was very careful. You two have just experienced a great battle. Why don't you rest and recover first? We will set off tomorrow so that you two know that the Ziwei Daoist palace originally planned to raid Lin Sun's tomb tomorrow. In the mystic realm, many brothers have already prepared. They only need to wait for the mystic realm to wander nearby to open the portal. Now that Lin Sun has been dealt with, it saves us a lot of trouble. Yes. So let's rest today. Tomorrow we will lead you to the portal. Since they said so, Lu Yi naturally agreed. He had consumed too much spiritual energy. Although he had taken some spiritual pills, he still needed some time to recover. Otherwise, he wouldn't have set up a formation here and waited for the Feng and Yun brothers to enter the trap. Ing Wuji's condition was much worse than his. His injuries had not healed and he really needed to rest. The formation was not removed. Ing Wuji walked to the side and licked his wounds silently. While recovering, Lu Yi casually chatted with the Feng and Yun brothers, inquiring about some information that he didn't know. The Feng and Yun brothers wanted to win him over, so they wouldn't hide anything. Besides, what Lu Yi asked was nothing more than some common sense, and didn't involve the secrets of the Ziwei Daoist palace. However, after this conversation, the Feng and Yun brothers were more and more sure that Lu Yi and Ing Wuji were the kind of inexperienced people. Naturally, they were happy. It was really good luck to pick up such two strong people when they went out to carry out a task. The night was peaceful. The next day, Lu Yi had fully recovered. Although Ing Wuji's injuries had not healed, he was much better than yesterday. When it was almost time, the Feng and Yun brothers led the way, followed by Lu Yi and Ing Wuji. After walking for a short distance, which was near the battlefield yesterday, the Feng and Yun brothers stopped. The Ziwei Daoist palace had already planned to raid Lin Sun's tomb. They only needed to wait for the mystic realm to wander nearby to carry out the plan. The portal was naturally not far from Lin Sun's tomb. At the same time, the mystic realm of the Ziwei Daoist palace was connected to the outside world. Many practitioners were waiting for the battle. The leader of the group was a woman dressed as a man. She looked valiant and formidable. Normally, women dressed as men just wanted to hide their feminine characteristics. However, no matter how hard they tried to hide, their natural softness and beauty could not be erased. Although this woman dressed as a man, she didn't mean to hide her identity as a woman. Her beauty was not lacking in firmness. The softness of a woman and the strength of a man were perfectly integrated in her body. Especially her eyes, which were as bright as stars and as sharp as an eagle. He was young and looked like he was in his early 20s. However, the qi on his body was extremely dense. He was not any weaker than the experts on the Yunhe list. This woman was Pang Huanin, the current palace lord of the Ziwei Daoist palace. For thousands of years, there were few women in the Ziwei Daoist palace who could sit in the position of palace lord, let alone at such a young age. There was only one reason why Pang Huanin could occupy such a high position with such a young body. That was she was strong enough. She had inherited the Ziwei Daoist palace's style of doing things since ancient times. Although she was a woman, her style was tougher than many men. When dealing with the corpse clan, she adhered to the idea of exterminating all of them. It was not the first time that the Ziwei Daoist palace had targeted the powerful corpse clan. Although Lin Sun was strong, it was not to the extent that she, the palace lord, had to deal with him personally. The reason why she came here this time was mainly to observe the strength of the two guests. Just a few days ago, the practitioners of the Ziwei Daoist palace who were patrolling outside found two powerful practitioners. Seeing them kill the corpse clan like cutting melons and vegetables, they couldn't help but admire them. They went up to them and talked to them. Then, they led the two into the Ziwei Daoist palace. Pang Huanin didn't care about the background of these two people, or whether they came from other mystic realms. As long as they could kill the corpse clan, the Ziwei Daoist palace would accept them as one of their own. After a few days of contact, Pang Huanin also found that the strength of these two people was indeed not to be underestimated. But what made her feel strange was that these two people claimed that they didn't come from other mystic realms, but they didn't seem to be from some stronghold. This was because Pang Huanin could clearly sense that although the two of them were polite when dealing with people, there was an indescribable pride in their bones. Just like herself, such people generally came from extraordinary backgrounds. But in the current situation of the Wuxia continent, if they didn't come from those two mystic realms, how noble could their backgrounds be? Although there were many doubts about these two people, Pang Huanin also adhered to the principle of not using people she didn't trust. This time she came here mainly to see how they would perform. Because the people who led them to the Ziwei Daoist palace highly praised their strength. "Palace Lord, we're here." An old man stepped forward and bowed. "Do we need to activate the sky-reflecting mirror first?" "No, Lin Sun's strength is extraordinary. If we activate the sky-reflecting mirror, he may sense it and open the door directly." "Yes," the old man answered, bowed, and left to preside over the opening of the door. Many practitioners of the Ziwei Daoist palace, who were waiting here, immediately activated their spiritual power secretly. In front of these practitioners, an unruly man holding a spear licked his lips and was full of fighting spirit. Beside him, another man in green clothes with a condensed breath also had a faint smile on his face. He didn't seem to care about the upcoming battle at all, and even looked forward to it. Chapter 809. They were Lu Qing of the Myriad Laws Pavilion and Feng Ruli of the Lingyun sect. Their luck was undoubtedly much worse than Lu Yi and Ying Wuji's. Not long after coming to the Wuxia continent, they met. Both of them belonged to the Myriad Demons Ridge. Even though Song Shanghan had a one-night stand, they had a natural closeness to each other. Later, they worked together to investigate the situation of this world. During this period, they encountered some corpses and fought many battles. The nearby patrolling cultivators of the Ziwei Daoist palace noticed them and came to talk to them. Then, they were led into the Ziwei Daoist palace. In these few days, the two of them slowly understood the general situation of this world. They also had some guesses as to why Tianji of the 9 continents would send them, who were ranked highly on the Cloud River battle ranking list, to such a place. Hearing that the Ziwei Daoist palace was going to raid Lin Sun's tomb, they couldn't hold back and took the initiative to ask for help. Coming from the top sects of the 9 states, the pride in their bones couldn't be concealed even if they didn't deliberately show it. "Brother Feng, the palace lord of the Ziwei Daoist palace probably wants to see our strength with her own eyes." "Don't hide your strength," Lu Qing said softly beside Feng Ruli. Feng Ruli grinned. "Don't worry. I won't let her harm us 9 states cultivators. But we still can't be careless. I heard that Lin Sun is a type of corpse and has killed a lot of corpses. Later, you and I will work together. I will find a way to make Lin Sun reveal his weakness, and you can kill him." Feng Ruli nodded and gently stroked the long spear in his hand. Spiritual light flashed on the spear, and his eyes were cold. "I will never underestimate any enemy." At this moment, a voice shouted, "The door is open." Feng Ruli moved and rushed toward the door with unparalleled momentum. Lu Qing, who was half a body's length behind him, followed closely behind. Many cultivators from the Ziwei Dao Palace saw this and praised them in their hearts. Regardless of whether these two were as powerful as they were rumored to be, Just their courage to face the corpse clan without fear was a sign that they were of the same origin as the Ziwei Dao Palace. After the two, the well-prepared cultivators of the Ziwei Daoist Palace stepped through the door and rushed out of the secret realm. Palace Lord. An old man beside Peng Huanin bowed slightly. Let's go. Let's see if our two guests are really brave. As he spoke, he clasped his hands behind his back and took a few steps to the door. Then his heroic figure passed through the door. His vision changed, but the expected battle did not break out. The many cultivators who had rushed out of the secret realm were scattered in the air, and their spiritual weapons were at a loss in their hands. Peng Huanin frowned slightly. She suddenly had a bad feeling. Did Lin Sun sense the danger and run away in advance? Otherwise, why was there no movement at all? What surprised her even more was the reaction of the two guests. At this moment, the two of them were both looking in a certain direction. The arrogance they had displayed even in front of her, the master of the secret realm, had completely vanished. Peng Huanin even sensed a hint of restraint from the two of them. What did he see? Peng Huanin followed their gazes and saw a pair of twins flying over. When they got close, they cupped their fists respectfully and said, 1,000 miles of wind and cloud, 1,000 miles of wind and cloud, greet the palace lord. Peng Huanin nodded. She recognized that the two of them were her people who were in charge of checking Lin Sun's tomb. She asked, where did Lin Sun go? 1,000 miles of wind and cloud replied, Lin Sun is dead. Peng Huanin raised her eyebrows and asked in surprise, who did it? In the current Wuxia continent, Lin Sun's strength was only below that of the corpse commanders. In the current Wuxia continent, apart from the Ziwei Daoist Palace, there were only two other secret realms that had the strength to take him down. However, would those two really dare to take the initiative to attack Lin Sun? Or did something happen that forced them to confront Lin Sun? It's Lu Ye over there. Fellow Daoist Lu did it. 1,000 miles of wind and cloud turned around and pointed in the direction of Lu Ye. Only then did Long Huanin notice the remnants of the battlefield from yesterday. She looked around and saw that a large area was filled with scattered pieces of charred corpses. Not far away, there was a head with eyes wide open and rotting flesh. Who else could it be but Lin Sun? Judging from the expression on his face before he died, he seemed to have seen an extremely shocking scene. The corpse clan was an undead. They were not afraid of anything. What could possibly frighten them? Behind Peng Huanin, the old man asked, are you saying that just the two of them killed Lin Sun? How unbelievable was this? Even if the Ziwei Daoist Palace wanted to deal with Lin Sun, they would have to send all their elites. After all, Lin Sun was a zombie. He had a huge group of zombies under his command. 1,000 miles of wind and cloud shook his head and said, Elder Shao, the one who killed Lin Sun is only fellow Daoist Lu Ye. Even though the old man had seen many storms, he couldn't help but gasp at this moment. He looked straight at 1,000 miles of wind and cloud with an expression that said, don't joke with me. Killing Lin Sun alone? He didn't even dare to think about it. Moreover, judging from the remnants of the battlefield, that person not only killed Lin Sun but also wiped out the huge group of zombies under his command. It seemed that the person used an earth-shattering fire element spell. Who are these two people? Elder Shao asked in surprise. On the other side, Peng Huanin looked at Lu Qing and Feng Ruli for a while, then at Lu Yi and Ning Wuji. She felt that the atmosphere between these brothers was not so harmonious. However, Lu Qing and Feng Ruli, who were proud and arrogant, were so cautious. Moreover, he had killed Lin Sun by himself. How strong was this guy named Lu Yi? Are you dumb? Lu Ye said softly. Behind him, Endless Shadow's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He had only wanted to smooth things over and ease the atmosphere, so he had casually made the order. But now, even he realized that something was wrong. Lu Ye seemed to be a little bit excited. Wasn't he pushing himself into the fire pit? In the subtle atmosphere, Lu Qing seemed to understand something. With relief on his face, he cupped his fists respectfully and said, Greetings, senior brother. Not to mention that Lu Ye was so powerful that it was not good to have any conflict with him here. Besides, Lu Ye was probably the only one who knew the purpose of 9 regions sending them here. So in any case they couldn't fall out with him. It was just a senior brother. They wouldn't lose anything. The corner of Feng Ruli's eyes twitched slightly. He sighed in his heart and could only salute, "Greetings, senior brother." He glared fiercely at Ing Wuji behind Lu Yi and cursed in his heart. "Lackey! Traitor!" Ing Wuji understood the meaning in his eyes and was full of grievances. Since ancient times, it was always a joyous occasion for brothers to recognize each other. But there had never been such a strange atmosphere like today. The Wind and Cloud brothers were stunned. Lu Yi had told them that they came from a small stronghold. After their master passed away, he and his junior brother left that place. However, he did not mention anything about a fourth junior brother or a sixth junior brother. According to this arrangement, wouldn't there be at least 6 of them? Were all of them so powerful? In the strange atmosphere, Pang Huanin stepped out and looked at Lu Yi. "Fellow Taoist Lu killed Lin Sun and eradicated a disaster for our human clan. It's really a great blessing for our human clan. Since you are the senior brother of fellow Taoist Lu and fellow Taoist Feng, you are not an outsider. Please come into the secret realm and let me play host." Lu Yi didn't refuse. "Thank you for your hospitality." Chapter 810. It was different from the secret realm of Silver Snake Valley, where Wuyuan City was the center and 16 cities spread out in all directions. The Ziwei Daoist Palace still maintained the layout from 1,000 years ago. Spirit peaks and mountains were undulating, and pavilions were scattered all over the mountains and fields. Many cultivators came and went. Looking around, it was as if one had entered a cultivation sect. The inheritance of the Ziwei Daoist Palace had never been cut off and had continued to this day. This was the biggest difference between the Ziwei Daoist Palace and the other 2 secret realms. It was also the root of the Ziwei Daoist Palace's unyielding style. Since 1,000 years ago, the Ziwei Daoist Palace had always been united. On the other hand, the 5 major clans in the Silver Snake Valley controlled the secret realm and were fighting for power. How could they have the time to deal with the Corpse Clan? For them, as long as the Corpse Clan didn't enter the secret realm, it was not a big deal. There was a hall in the Spirit Peak. Pang Huanin and a group of powerhouses from the Ziwei Daoist Palace sat down in front of them. Wine and spiritual fruits, which were rarely seen in the outside world, were presented to Lu Yi as a way of thanking him for eliminating Lin Sun, as well as a welcome dinner for Lu Yi and Ing Wuji. Pang Huanin didn't know how strong Lu Qing and Feng Ruli were. After all, she didn't see it with her own eyes. She only heard some news from her subordinates. But if what Brother Feng Yun said was true and Lin Sun was killed by Lu Ye alone, then this person's strength was terrifying. And as Elder Shao had expected, what killed Lin Sun and his huge group of corpses was a powerful fire spell. The shape of the spell was quite similar to the legendary fire phoenix of the 4 sacred beasts. After 3 rounds of wine, Elder Shao said, "Little friend Lu's strength is amazing. This old man admires you. I'm also friends with little friend Lu and little friend Feng." As soon as the old man spoke, the hall quieted down. If it were only Lu Qing and Feng Ruli, the Ziwei Daoist Palace wouldn't care too much. Such powerhouses should be recruited to serve the Daoist Palace and fight for justice. However, Lu Yi and Ing Wuji had suddenly appeared, and from the various clues, there were quite a few of them, at least 6 of them. This made the Ziwei Daoist Palace pay attention. It was hard to tell what was in a person's heart. Who knew what these people were thinking? It wouldn't be good for Ziwei Dao Palace if people like them were strong enough to harm them. However, if they could confirm their origins and confirm that they were willing to fight alongside the Ziwei Palace, it would definitely be a good thing for the palace. Therefore, they had to get to the bottom of this no matter what. Lu Yi, who was sitting at the table, had not touched the wine in front of him. Naturally, he understood what Elder Shao meant. He turned his head and looked straight at Pang Huanin. "We don't know the origin of our master. We have been living in a secluded place with our master since we were very young. It was only a few months ago when our master passed away that we came out. Lu Ye's so-called master was completely unwarranted. The Holy Ji Palace wanted to find out where they came from, and Lu Yi was unable to give them a satisfactory answer." Without waiting for Elder Shao to continue asking, Lu Yi continued, "There are 9 of us in total. We met with an accident and were separated. Only today did I find out that 4th and 6th are here at the Tao Palace. 9 people. Elder Shao raised his eyebrows. This number was a bit more than he had expected. After pondering for a moment, he opened his mouth and said, "Little friend, do all of your martial brothers have the same cultivation level as you? Except for little junior sister, who doesn't know the Tao of battle, the others are just barely strong." Feng really lowered his head and drank. He was ranked 6th in the Cloud River contest, and only Lu Ye could comment on him like this. If anyone else dared to say that his strength was just barely strong, he would definitely not agree. Master left suddenly. Before he left, he didn't say much to us. He only said one thing. Which one? Peng Huanin asked. Eradicate the corpse clan and cleanse the world. Lu Yi replied in a deep voice. Lu Qing was deep in thought. He thought that Lu Ye must have received some guidance from Tianji before entering the Wushuang continent. This was also their purpose for coming here. It was not much different from his previous speculation. Elder Shao nodded. Your master cared about the world and was able to cultivate talents like these young friends. He shouldn't be an unknown person. After we left the mountain, we acted according to master's last words. After discovering that there were 3 secret realms in the human clan, 7th junior brother, and I wanted to seek refuge in one place and seek cooperation. However, we didn't expect that the Silver Snake Valley was timid and despicable. Not only did they not want to fight against the Corpse Clan, but they were also afraid of our cultivation. Therefore, 7th junior brother and I had no choice but to leave the Silver Snake Valley. Elder Shao stretched out his hand and stroked his beard. However, those despicable villains secretly sent you 2 near Lin Sun's tomb, and wanted to use Lin Sun to kill you too. Both Peng Huanin and Elder Shao knew this because Brother Feng and Elder Shao had reported it truthfully. Yes. Lu Yi nodded and stared intently at Peng Huanin. Although I've heard a lot of rumors about the Ziwei Taoist Palace, seeing is believing. Today I'd like to ask Palace Master Peng, if my brother and I intend to eradicate the corpse race, can the Ziwei Taoist Palace help us? He was well aware that the Ziwei Taoist Palace wanted to find out the background of Lu Yi and the others at this banquet, but this was not the 9 regions after all. For outsiders like them, there was not much time to waste, so Lu Yi was too lazy to beat around the bush with the Ziwei Taoist Palace. It was better to get straight to the point. Of course he had a lot to hide, but those things were not easy to say. The Ziwei Taoist Palace should be aware of it. However, as long as they were like-minded, it was not a big problem. As long as these outsiders showed their determination to fight against the Corpse Clan to the end and put it into action, the Ziwei Taoist Palace would let down their guard against them. Peng Huanin narrowed her eyes slightly. Since the change of the world, the Ziwei Taoist Palace has been taking the great responsibility of eradicating the Corpse Clan. Her voice was sonorous and her expression was firm. Lu Yi nodded. That's good. But Peng Huanin laughed and leaned forward slightly. But there is one thing that Taoism fellow Lu is wrong about. I'd like to hear it. For thousands of years, the Ziwei Taoist Palace has followed the will of our ancestors and has never changed. Countless people have died in this war. The Ziwei Taoist Palace is determined to wipe out the Corpse Clan, whether or not Taoism fellow Lu and others help us. If we can't do it in 1,000 years, we will do it again. If we can't do it in another 1,000 years, we will do it in 10,000 years. There will be a time when we can wipe out the Corpse Clan. Even if we have to fight to the last soldier of the Ziwei Taoist Palace, we will not compromise. Therefore, fellow Taoist Lu, I sincerely invite all of you to join the Ziwei Taoist Palace and contribute to the future of the human race. Lu Yi realized that this woman had a strong character. He just said that he wanted the Ziwei Taoist Palace to help them, but in the blink of an eye, Peng Huanin wanted to rope them in. It was just a question of who was the master and who was the subordinate. From the standpoint of the Ziwei Taoist Palace and Peng Huanin, it was natural for her to fight for these things. Lu Yi didn't want to argue with her about this and said, if Palace Master can agree to 3 conditions, let's hear it. Peng Huanin's interest was piqued. Lu Yi said, Palace Master, I've told you that there are a total of 9 of us. Now, only 4 of us are gathered here, and the whereabouts of the other 5 are unknown. Therefore, I would like to ask for your help to find the whereabouts of the other 5 junior brothers and junior sisters. Of course, Peng Huanin nodded. I just don't know what characteristics those 5 people have. Their strength is not bad. The group of Ziwei Taoist Palace cultivators were stunned. What kind of characteristics were these? No one present felt that they were weak. Peng Huanin was also amused. I wonder how strong Taoism fellow Taoist Lu is referring to? Lu Yi raised his head and looked at Feng Ruli. 6th junior brother, demonstrate. Feng Ruli almost cursed out loud. He was a core disciple of the Soaring Cloud sect. He was not some commoner. You want me to demonstrate in front of so many people? Do you think I'll do it just because you asked me to? However, when he met Lu Ye's gaze, Feng Ruli knew that he couldn't refuse. Otherwise, this guy would definitely find a way to make things difficult for him. We came to the Ziwei Taoist Palace first. He picked up the wine cup in front of him, took a sip and stepped out. Standing in the main hall, he brandished his long spear, and his spiritual energy surged. He wantonly said, "Any one of you who thinks you're not bad." The group of Ziwei Taoist Palace cultivators' faces darkened, and their fighting spirits surged. However, without Peng Huanin's order, no one dared to step out. In the end, Elder Xiao signaled one of them with his eyes. "Qi Ping, you go." "Yes." The cultivator called Qi Ping jumped out and landed in front of Feng Ruli. With an eager expression, he grinned and said, "I heard that Taoism fellow Taoist Feng is very powerful. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, but Lin Sun was killed, so I missed the opportunity. I didn't expect to have such an opportunity again. Taoism fellow Taoist Feng, please enlighten me." Feng Ruli looked indifferent. "Just do your best." "Okay." Qi Ping's smile disappeared. "Taoism fellow Taoist Feng, you're underestimating me. Cut the crap." "Good." Qi Ping angrily shouted. His spirit energy suddenly surged as he summoned his spirit artifact. It was a long staff. With the staff in hand, Qi Ping's aura suddenly changed. As the staff danced, he brazenly charged toward Feng Ruli. Without any fancy moves, he smashed down with the staff. Spiritual vigor wrapped around the long staff, and layers of phantoms appeared on its body. Even if Qi Ping did not use his full strength, he used at least 80% of it. The main reason was that the venue was limited. However, he believed that even if he did not use his full strength, he should be able to test Feng Ruli's strength. In the seat of honor, Elder Xiao nodded slightly, apparently satisfied with Qi Ping's performance. However, in the next moment, exclamations sounded in the venue. This was because Feng Ruli held his spear with one arm and thrust it out, accurately hitting Qi Ping's body amidst the layers of phantoms. In a moment of stalemate, their spiritual energies collided and surged. Feng Ruli's body swayed slightly while Qi Ping, who had charged at Feng Ruli aggressively, was sent flying and landed outside the hall. The wine cup in Peng Huanin's hand was almost crushed. She clicked to download the Best Book Chaser app. Many readers used it to read books aloud. Chapter 8:11. The whole hall was silent. Qi Ping's strength was not among the top in Ziwei Palace, but he was worthy of being called a strong man. However, such a strong man was repelled by Feng Ruli's spear. Judging from Feng Ruli's expression, it was clear that he had not used his full strength. Elder Xiao, who was sitting next to Peng Huanin, pulled off his beard. They didn't know how strong Feng Ruli was. Only the Ziwei Palace cultivators who led them into the secret realm had seen it with their own eyes. Today they wanted to borrow Lin Sun's strength to take a closer look, but Lin Sun was killed first. Until this moment. One more. Feng Ruli stabbed his long spear into the ground and shouted in high spirits with the help of some alcohol. Without waiting for Elder Zhao's order, a bearded man stood up and shouted, "I'll do it." Feng Ruli laughed and waved his spear, aiming at the bearded man's head. 5 breaths later, the burly man fell out of the hall. One more time. Feng Ruli was so excited that he directly put his spear on his shoulder like a stick and glanced at the Ziwei Palace cultivators. A moment later, the third person was thrown out of the hall. From beginning to end, Feng Ruli had only used 3 spear moves. "Sixth brother, it's about time," Lu Yi said. Feng really shook his head. I haven't had enough yet. His personality was like this. He liked to fight. The 3 confrontations were just a warm-up for him. I'll fight with you. Lu Yi looked up. Feng Rulai felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over him in the middle of winter. Sobering up, Zhang Yang quickly withdrew his aura and put away his spear. Without even looking at Lu Yi, he walked back to his seat, whispering softly, drinking wine is still the best. Peng Huanin's eyes narrowed slightly. The cultivators of the Ziwei Taoist palace seemed to have realized something as well, and they all looked at Lu Yi with solemn eyes. In the silence, Elder Shao coughed softly. Little friend Feng's strength is really amazing. She was more than just exceptional. Peng Huanin was probably the only one in the entire Ziwei palace who could match her strength. No one else could possibly be her opponent. Elder, you flatter me. Feng really laughed and continued to drink. I wonder, with little friend Feng's strength, where does he rank among all the senior and junior brothers? As soon as Elder Shao said this, everyone's ears pricked up. Feng really said carelessly, us martial brothers are ranked based on strength. I, old 6, am naturally ranked 6. Peng Huanin's eyes narrowed into slits as she gasped in astonishment. Feng Ruli's strength was comparable to hers. Then wouldn't the first 5 be stronger than him? What about Lu Ye, the eldest senior brother? She exhaled softly, calming her complicated emotions, and turned to look at Lu Yi. Fellow Taoist, please continue with your other conditions. The second condition is that I want to go to the Sumeru mystic realm. I need your help with this. Peng Huanin was puzzled. Why do you want to go to Mount Sumeru? Lu Yi said, it has to do with my lost junior brothers and sisters. 7th brother and I went to Silver Snake Valley. 4th brother and 6th brother went to Ziwei Palace. Maybe my other junior brothers and sisters went to Mount Sumeru. If I want to find them, I have to go to Mount Sumeru. That's not easy. Sir Shao shook his head. Ever since the heavenly transformation, the 3 great arcane realms of the human race have rarely interacted with each other. Generally speaking, it's only when the welcoming emissaries run into each other, or when they meet in a specific location at a specific time. If you want to go directly to one of the arcane realms. Very difficult. Peng Huanin asked, what's your third condition? Lu Yi shook his head slowly. If Ziwei Palace can meet the first 2 conditions, then it won't be too late to tell you. But please rest assured, Palace Master, I won't force you. Besides, the third condition should coincide with the philosophy of Ziwei Palace. The philosophy of Ziwei Palace? Peng Huanin said thoughtfully. After a long time she said, the first condition is nothing. It's reasonable that you want to find your junior brothers and sisters. The Ziwei Palace can tell you. Feng Ruli said, we want to know, what's the third condition you mentioned to Ziwei Palace? And why do you want to go to Mount Sumeru? Lu Yi glanced at him and then looked at Lu Qing. If you have any questions, just ask me directly. There's no need to ask others. Lu Qing smiled faintly. Fellow Taoist Lu misunderstood. Halfway through his sentence, he couldn't continue because Lu Ye's gaze had turned sharp and playful, as if he had seen through Lu Qing's heart, liver, spleen, lungs, and kidneys. He hurriedly corrected himself. But this is indeed what I'm puzzled about. I don't think it's just as fellow Taoist explained to the Ziwei Dao Palace, right? The 9 of us came here and were scattered all over the place. Since Tianji has gathered us here, we should work together. Now that the 4 of us are here, what's wrong with me asking Ziwei Daoist Palace to find the other 5? Lu Qing nodded. Of course there's nothing wrong with it. But if it's just to find people, why go to Mount Sumeru? Let Ziwei help as much as possible. As for the second condition, I'll discuss it with Elder Shao and see if there's anything we can do. Then I'll wait for Palace Lord's good news. Lu Yi nodded. The banquet quickly dispersed. Lu Yi and the others were settled in a quiet mountain peak. Ziwei Palace didn't leave anyone behind, so there were only the 4 of them in a 10-li radius. In the side room, Lu Yi, who was resting cross-legged, frowned as he looked at Lu Qing and Feng Ruli, who came in uninvited. Behind them was Ying Wuji, who was frowning. Chapter 8:12. Lu Qing naturally had a guess as to why Tianji sent the 9 of them to this world, and it was no different from what Lu Yi said. This was also the reason why he and Feng really joined the Ziwei Daoist palace after learning about the situation on the Peerless Continent. Lu Qing also wanted to borrow the power of this world's secret realm. However, he always felt that Lu Yi should have more information than the others, especially after Lu Yi made his request during the day. At this moment after probing, he didn't get any useful clues, so he could only give up. He couldn't threaten Lu Yi with force. Their fists weren't as big as his. If they really fought, the 3 of them might not have a good ending. Lu Qing stared deeply at Lu Yi and secretly reminded him, "I hope it's as fellow Taoist said. But please remember that this is not the land of the 9 provinces. It's better for us not to have too many prejudices." The 3 of them left. After sitting for a while, Lu Yi stood up and walked out. The night was thick. There was no moonlight or starlight on the Peerless Continent, only a turbid sun in the daytime. Therefore at night even cultivators were unwilling to go out easily. However, according to the records of many ancient books, the Peerless Continent was not like this before the change of the sky. This world also had a dazzling sun, and at night the sky was also full of stars and the moon was tilted. However, after the change of the sky, everything changed. Lu Ye's figure was like the wind. Soon he came to a nearby spirit peak, where a figure was standing quietly. Noticing his arrival, the person turned to look at him and slightly nodded. "Fellow Taoist Lu. Palace Master Pang." The person standing here was Pang Huanin. The spirit peak here was quite high, and she seemed to be overlooking the lights between the mountains below. "Fellow Taoist Lu, you've been busy all the way here. Instead of resting, you still have the leisure to travel at night?" She was secretly shocked. How did he know that she was here? This place was not close to the spirit peak where Lu Yi and the others were staying. There was no reason for him to detect her whereabouts. Isn't it the same for Palace Master? Lu Yi came to her side and stood still. Pang Huanin laughed and didn't answer. She couldn't say that she wanted to find Lu Yi, but when she came here she was a little hesitant, so she stopped. Unexpectedly, Lu Yi took the initiative to come knocking on his door. For Lu Yi to know that she was here was not because he had sensed it himself. His mind was indeed powerful, but the range of his perception was not so vast. It was Yi, who had been hiding in the dark and patrolling the area, who had sent him a message. Upon hearing this, Lu Yi immediately understood Pang Huanin's intention. It seemed that she wanted to talk to him alone, but couldn't make up her mind at the last moment, so she decided to stay here. It just so happened that Lu Yi also wanted to talk to her alone. There were some things that were not easy to say in front of so many people during the day. The mountain breeze blew gently, refreshing and pleasant. After a long silence, Pang Huanin finally said, "Fellow Taoist Lu, in fact, I still find it hard to imagine what kind of senior or master in today's world could cultivate such powerful experts like you and your senior brothers. Moreover, according to my observation, your masters don't seem to be of the same origin." Even with Lu Ye's explanation, Pang Huanin still can't figure out their origins. She's confident that her strength is one of the best in the Wuxia continent. Since she was young, she had encountered many opportunities and encounters. That's why she was able to ascend to the position of Palace Master at such a young age. However, among Lu Ye's senior brothers, the 6th brother's strength was almost on par with hers. It was really hard to imagine. "Palace Master, are you afraid that our senior brothers will harm the Ziwei Daoist palace?" Pang Huanin shook her head and said, "I don't think so. You're all humans and you're capable of killing corpses. That's enough for me. As for whether you'll harm the Ziwei Daoist palace or not, I've never thought about it. If you really have the ability to eradicate the corpses, I won't mind giving the Ziwei Daoist palace to you." "Palace Master, you are so bold. If that's the case, why do you still care about our origins?" Pang Huanin turned her head. In the dark night, her eyelids seemed to blink playfully. "Just take it as a woman's curiosity. However, the only thing I can be sure of is that you are not from the other 2 secret realms. Those 2 secret realms don't have such a background." Lu Yi remained silent. "Compared to your background, I'm actually more interested in knowing something else." Pang Huanin changed the topic. "Romance bar. Palace Master, what do you want to know?" The woman's eyes sharpened, and there was a hint of inquiry in them. Why do you want to go to Mount Meru? She was not a fool. Although Lu Yi had given some seemingly reasonable explanations during the conversation during the day, how could Peng Huanin believe it so easily? If she was such a simple woman, she would not be the palace master. She could sense that Lu Yi was not telling the truth. Of course, it's to find my lost junior brothers and sisters. Peng Huanin smiled. If that's the case, there's no need to go to Mount Meru. I'll ask someone to send a message to Mount Meru and ask around. You can't believe it unless you see it with your own eyes. Fellow Taoist, your junior brothers and sisters are quite strong. If they are really in Mount Meru, they will not be unknown. You can easily find out the truth. Why are you so persistent? I still want to go there myself. Peng Huanin stared at his side profile for a long time without turning her head. Lu Yi was indifferent, as if she did not exist. Finally, Peng Huanin looked away and sighed heavily. Fellow Taoist, you may not believe it, but when I saw you for the first time, I couldn't help but think that you are a trustworthy person. Although she had tried her best to suppress these inexplicable thoughts, and even deliberately warned herself against Lu Yi and the others, what surprised her was that she could not erase that sense of trust. This was also the reason why she came to see Lu Yi tonight. She wanted to find out if Lu Yi had secretly used some mysterious secret technique to affect her state of mind. If that was really the case, then these outsiders were too dangerous. But thinking about it carefully, such a strange secret technique was probably difficult for even the great cultivators before the heavenly change, let alone the cultivators of today. A person in a high position like her would not easily reveal her true thoughts, but after chatting with Lu Yi, she finally couldn't hold back. Hearing this, Lu Yi frowned. Palace Master, do you only trust me? Or do you also trust my junior brothers? Of course, he didn't think that Peng Huanin deliberately said such words to get close to him. Since she said so, it must be true. Only you. Peng Huanin replied in a deep voice. Lu Yi finally turned his head to look at her, as if he had vaguely noticed something. Immediately, he secretly activated the broken origin of the soaring dragon realm. In the next moment, both he and Peng Huanin were shocked as they vaguely sensed something. Fellow Taoist, you. Peng Huanin's expression was full of surprise and doubt. Obviously, she did not understand what had happened. She quickly retreated several feet, and her eyes were alert. What did you do just now? At that moment, the inexplicable sense of trust in her grew stronger, and she even felt that she could expose all her secrets in front of him without worrying that he would hurt her. This feeling was too dangerous. Lu Yi said thoughtfully, Palace Master, you have such strength at such a young age. I don't think you are just talented, right? Are there many opportunities on the path of cultivation? Peng Huanin was even more surprised. How do you know? There were even some strange phenomena when she was born. In front of the main hall of the Ziwei Taoist Palace, there was a withered 300-year-old tree that came back to life. When she was in her teens, she accidentally found a cave left behind by an ancestor, and found some broken secret techniques of the Ziwei Taoist Palace. It was also because of these reasons that no one in the Ziwei Taoist Palace objected to her taking the position of Palace Master as a woman. No wonder. Lu Yi roughly understood what was going on. Strictly speaking, the woman in front of him should be the child of destiny of this realm. Just like Yi Lu in the Soaring Dragon Realm, it was just that the disaster that the Soaring Dragon Realm was facing was too fierce. It was the invasion of an entire realm. Therefore, even if Yi Lu was blessed with luck and obtained the Dragon Emperor, he was unable to turn the tide. In the Great Battle, Yi Lu died and the Dragon Emperor was destroyed. The Wushuang continent had not reached such a level yet, but perhaps it was not far away. The more a realm was in danger of being destroyed, the more likely it was for a person like the child of destiny to be born. It was the reaction of heaven and earth when faced with a crisis. It was heaven and earth's way of saving itself. Since he was the child of destiny, he must be tainted with the origin of heaven and earth. Lu Yi had the broken origin of the Soaring Dragon Realm, which gave Peng Huanin an inexplicable sense of trust. It could be said to be a kind of guidance from the unseen world, or it could be said to be the resonance of the origin of the two realms. At this point, Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat as he thought of another thing. Peng Huanin could feel this, but he could not. It was not because the broken origin of the soaring dragon realm was inferior to that of the Wushuang continent, but because the Wushuang continent had its own will of heaven and earth. The will of heaven and earth of the soaring dragon realm had long been destroyed with the destruction of the realm. Although the broken origin was obtained by Lu Yi, it would not give him any guidance. Peng Huanin was different from the Wushuang continent. However, based on the current situation, even if the Wushuang continent had its own will of heaven and earth, it should be in a hazy state. Or perhaps the original will of heaven and earth had become incomplete because of the destruction of the Wushuang continent. Therefore, it could only give Peng Huanin a trace of intangible guidance, which made her feel a sense of trust in the person in front of her. Lu Yi roughly understood why he and the others were sent here by the 9 prefectures Tianji. The world had been destroyed, and there was no way to save itself. The broken will of heaven and earth of the Wushuang continent should have been asking for help from the outside world. This message should have been captured by the 9 prefectures Tianji, which then located the Wushuang continent. Then, the 9 prefectures Tianji gathered the 9 most powerful cultivators of the Cloud River tier of this generation, and sent them to the Wushuang continent at some cost. Lu Yi clicked to download the best book-chasing app. Many readers use this app to read books aloud. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.